absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK, from Telford to Rothbury to Derry Moor.
On your TV and on your radio, of course, so you can take us out and about.
Yeah, wherever you are, you can take us with you. Coming up this morning...
The Sunday Times reports the Chancellor has won the tug-of-war over a hike in national insurance. In a joint article, the PM and Rishi Sunak insist that they're still tax-cutting Conservatives.
As the PM considers doubling the number of troops it has in Eastern Europe, amid escalating tensions over Ukraine, we hear from Ukrainians living here in the UK about how it's affecting them.
Many Ukrainians are worried, apprehensive, because they know that any time Putin could say yes and troops would cross the border, as they did in 2014.
And today marks the anniversary of the day that Britain bid farewell to one of its greatest ever leaders, Sir Winston Churchill. The former Prime Minister's funeral took place 57 years ago today.
And to mark that anniversary, we're going to be joined later in the programme by a Winston Churchill impersonator. Here he is, yeah. That's not the real man, that's the impersonator. Fighting them on the beaches, look.
I can't wait to meet him. It's going to be great. It's going to be interesting. Don't forget you can join in any of our discussions by emailing us gbviews@gbnews.uk or send us a tweet at GBNews.
Well, look, one story we're going to be looking at, and we want you to join in the discussion about this, actually, is about the organisation PETA. PETA. It's the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
Yeah, they say we should keep cats indoors for their protection and to protect our birds. Well, yesterday on my Twitter account, I asked you if you agree, and I posted this picture. I took this picture last night of me and Timmy.
Oh, yeah.
That's me and my casuals.
I was going to say, that's you in your leisure wear.
Yeah. But that was Timmy when I said to him, you're not meant to go out. And he was not very impressed, as you can see. So you got in touch with your thoughts and views and cats.
Yeah, and this is what you sent us. Richard says, this is our cat Charlie Bear. Oh, yes, he does look a bit grim. Not grim, but gruff. Gruff, doesn't he? He looks like a bear, in other words. Richard goes on to say, we keep all our cats indoors. They have no interest at all to go outside. They're perfectly happy to stay indoors.
Adam, though, says his cat Jasmine doesn't approve. She doesn't approve.
And Sarah says Lily loves being outdoors. You see, I would have thought that's natural.
Yeah, I think it's right. Maisie, who actually has her own Twitter account, says that she goes out, but only in the garden, and she's supervised. It's the best of both worlds. Quite how you supervise a cat.
Well, exactly. And I would have thought a cat would just go off anyway.
Yeah, they don't actually have a very big perimeter that they travel in. It's only about 500 yards or something.
Next door's cat comes into our garden, but I mean, cats. Well, that's what I used to. I always thought cats choose where they want to go, don't they?
They do,
and that's natural. And if Peter wants to say that the safest thing for a cat is to keep it indoors, I just wonder whether that's natural, really. Although obviously some cats are okay.
Well, some cats like being indoors, but I mean, I just think most cats still have that sort of wild side where they want to go out and hunt. I mean, see, Timmy goes out to hunt. I don't think he ever catches anything.
2.5 billion birds, they say, cats are responsible for killing. 2.5 billion. And even more little mammals, little mice and things. And I think the thing that upsets a lot of people is that they do bring them back. and they do enjoy taunting them, don't they?
They do taunt them, but then it's if we're all for nature and things being natural and all that, well, that's nature.
So if you keep your cat indoors always, if from from the earliest, from a kitten, it's always been indoors, does it not seek to go outside? Does it not?
Maybe not.
And obviously, then it just never naturally kills things, does it? Except maybe your curtains or your furniture.
Well, this is it. But then some people, I mean, in America, they're very big at declawing cats and things.
Oh,
which
no,
isn't
that
nice.
doesn't seem right either.
No.
Peter say that if you're going to keep your cat indoors, you should give it a room with a view. Always make sure that it can go near a window because cats love to look out the window. And we just saw a picture there, didn't we, of one of the cats looking outside.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all very nice and well, but they still want to get out and...
See,
Even if they go and just hunt the little... I mean, Timmy loves jumping on the grass on the lawn because those little tiny insects come out and... he plays like mad doing that.
So you shouldn't have a cat flap, that's what Peter say. Because the cat flap obviously gives the cat the idea that it can come and go exactly when it pleases. I've got a cat flap for my little dog, and she likes to stick her head out of the cat flap.
Can she get the rest of her body out?
Yeah, well, she could if she wanted to, but she sort of keeps her body indoors if she has a look out to see if it's raining or anything like that, or if anything interesting is happening. Then the rest of her follows if it is interesting outside.
I think you have to remember we're their pets rather than the other way round.
Yes.
That's how I view it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I just
Anyway,
do
we'd
as
love
I'm
to hear
told.
your cat stories. Do you keep them indoors? How do you manage them? If you supervise them when they go out, how do you supervise them? Well, some people take them on a lead.
A
don't they?
lead. Okay, if you've got a cat on a lead, I'd love to see how you manage that one. GBViews at gbnews.uk. Now, in our main news today, the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have jointly pledged to go ahead with a £12 billion national insurance hike, despite MPs' pleas to scrap it.
Yeah, national insurance is expected to increase in April, although Boris Johnson and the Chancellor insist they are still tax-cutting Conservatives. They say they've got to go ahead with the plan, however.
Well, let's talk to Harry Phibb, journalist at Conservative Home. Good to see you this morning. I mean, look, this is going to be so unpopular with core Tory voters, never mind anyone else who votes for a different party. Why do you think they're still going ahead with this?
Oh, I agree it'll be unpopular, and I think it's a great mistake, and it's not a one-off. I mean, we've had a pattern of a Conservative government implementing socialist policies, increasing taxation, which is damaging for the economy. It damages incentives, and it also goes against Conservative principles of freedom, that we should be able to choose how we spend our money rather than having it taken from us and spent by politicians and bureaucrats. I suppose, to answer your question, it's loss of face, isn't it? That they feel once they've decided something, that if there's a U-turn, then that undermines the government's authority, and the Chancellor might say, well, it undermines his credibility in the markets. That he's going to keep the deficit down. But really, what he should be doing is looking at spending. This is what seems to be ignored: is that you can reduce the budget deficit and you can reduce taxation if you start to reduce state spending. And most of your viewers will have come across wasteful state spending in their daily lives, and it's got completely out of control. It got higher and higher and higher, and that's where there needs to be far more determination to get the spending down.
The Prime Minister and are really in touch enough with ordinary people's lives. I mean, yesterday, throughout the programme, we had emails from people who would naturally want to vote Tory, but are really scared of the cost of living and the way it's just mounting up, the cost of energy, and now this. Do you think that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor fully understand their lives?
Well, I think that, to be fair, most members of Parliament would spend a lot of time dealing with casework, dealing with people who have particular problems, who come and see them, and they would around knocking on doors, canvassing at elections in their own constituencies and for other people. So I think in some ways politicians of all parties are obliged to be reasonably in touch. But I do think that there's an arrogance that politicians tend to have, and that there needs to be, from the backbench Conservative MPs, a way of asserting to the Prime Minister that people are having pressure with the cost of living, and that if people vote Conservative, they expect the Conservatives to come up with solutions. And so, for example, we talked about lower tax, but I think energy is another one. We had the moratorium banning development of shale. We've had this extreme sort of scaremongering over climate change that the world's about to end, and using that to try and justify the big increase in energy bills, all the taxes and levies and restrictions in supply. And I think that's been very damaging, and it certainly does particularly hit people on low incomes, particularly hits pensioners. And I'm pleased that now a lot of Conservative MPs are pushing the government strongly to have a rethink.
And yet, of course, I mean, they do position themselves as the party of financial responsibility. We've got a very big black hole to fill, partly because of all the money that was shelled out during COVID. And if you break this down, I mean, on average, it means people are going to be paying an additional £2.50 a week. I mean, there is an argument to say, well, not everyone, but most people could afford that.
But it's on top of all the other taxes, and also it's the wrong way around of looking at it. This isn't money that belongs to the state, and then they very kindly allow us to have a little bit of money that they feel we need to get by on. And the increase in state spending isn't just to do with coronavirus. Obviously, that's been massive, but this has been going on. I mean, really, what we've had is that we had Labour governments putting up taxation and putting up spending, and then Conservative governments, rather than reversing it, have continued in the same direction. And we've got, the civil service has now greatly increased in size. We've got an astonishing amount of money spent on quangos. I mean, there's all sorts of areas where people would be able to identify spending going in a way that isn't providing public services, that isn't being delivered efficiently, and they're entitled to be indignant when the government announces £1 billion for some new scheme or another and says, "Oh, we guarantee that every penny will be well spent on the NHS or whatever it is." When people know, of course this is nonsense. Of course, the waste in state spending is massive, and I think that's where the government lacks credibility when they say, "Oh, we need to increase taxes to try and get borrowing under control."
OK.
Well, thanks very much indeed. Yeah, we'll leave it there, but I just wonder whether they would ever U-turn. It would probably make them very popular with some, wouldn't it?
Wow.
Harry Phibb, thanks very much indeed. That's Harry Phibb there from Conservative Home.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, a U-turn at this stage, after they've then come out and sort of said, no, we're sticking with it.
They said no ifs, no buts, didn't they? They're sticking with it. Yeah, so U-turn now might be impossible. Left it too late, but...
I don't know, it's just...
It just seems... It's bad timing, isn't it? It's just
it's
one
such
thing
bad
heaped upon
timing.
another. And I think people are very frightened of the way that the cost of living seems to be out of control almost.
But then are they going to do anything about energy bills? I mean, specifically about energy bills. I mean, the thing is, the national insurance hike is meant to pay for sort of health and social care,
yes,
isn't it? And obviously there's a social care crisis at the moment. So how do they fund that if they don't do this £12 billion
well, then they
increase?
should be selling it better, shouldn't they? Instead
Yeah.
of saying, we're going ahead, no ifs, no buts, shouldn't they be selling it better to us and telling us why and exactly how they're going to spend the money so that we can see it for ourselves?
Yeah, well, maybe that's a fair point. Let us know what you think this morning.
GBviews at gbnews.uk.
Bringing up to date then with all the headlines, and the Prime Minister is looking at doubling the number of troops deployed to strengthen Europe's borders in the face of rising Russian aggression. The Prime Minister said it would send a clear message to the Kremlin that we will not tolerate their destabilising activity.
The increase in national insurance, as we were talking about, is set to go ahead, despite reports of Boris Johnson wobbling on the policy. The 1.25% rise coming in April is designed to tackle COVID-induced NHS backlog and reform social care. The Prime Minister has been under pressure from some in his party to scrap or at least delay the measure in the midst of the cost of living crisis.
The government says Wolverhampton and Sheffield will be the first of 20 disadvantaged areas to gain access to a £1.5 billion fund. Part of the levelling up plans, the money will be used to develop new neighbourhoods on brownfield sites.
Many people in the northeast of England are still without power this morning as Storm Malik continues to ravage the country. They've said it's like living in the dark ages. Weather warnings have been in place since Friday as 100-mile-an-hour winds batter northern parts of the UK. And a 60-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy have already been killed by the storm.
On the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the former leader of the Labour Party says it's an outrage that no one's been convicted for the murders. Jeremy Corbyn has also condemned government plans to ban prosecutions for troubles killings. Boris Johnson has tweeted that we must learn from the past, reconcile and build a peaceful future for people in Northern Ireland.
And around 50,000 children aged 5 to 11 are now eligible to get their first COVID-19 vaccination. Children who are most at risk of COVID or who are living with someone who is vulnerable will be offered the jab. They'll be given 2 Pfizer vaccines, 8 weeks apart, and the dose will be a third of the amount used for adults.
Yeah, I don't know what you make of. There's so much controversy over children getting the vaccine, but I sort of think really,
there are some
why not?
households where the children want it and the parents are anxious that they shouldn't, maybe. It would be great to hear from you if you're facing that dilemma yourself. Well, I guess you must be if you've got a family.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'd do.
No, I don't know. I mean, that's the
I'm glad
thing.
my children are adults, so I haven't got to take that decision, but it's a worrying decision.
Well, it
No, I
is.
think I'd get them vaccinated.
Do you think you
I
just would?
Yeah.
I think you just would. It's interesting, the people I know who work on some of the emergency wards who've said sort of 95% of the people who are in there sort of on ventilators and things are not vaccinated.
Yeah. And that's the worry, isn't it, of course.
So it's, but you know, people aren't happy. A lot of people aren't happy.
But we have vaccinations for, I was going to say just about everything else, but we do have. And when you have children, you're always taking them to the clinic to get them vaccinated against something. I just wonder why we're so uptight about the COVID vaccine.
Is it just because it's not been around very long and so we don't know the long-term effects potentially?
So. Yeah.
The scientists seem pretty sure about it.
They are, and so far, so good, surely.
Anyway, let us know what you think. Now, as we just heard, the Prime Minister is reportedly considering doubling the number of troops deployed in Eastern Europe.
Ministers are currently weighing up options on how to increase the pressure on Russia amid heightened tensions over Ukraine, of course. Our reporter Alice Porter looks at the crisis and how it's affecting Ukrainians in the UK.
The rumblings of war. This weekend, Russia moved more troops and arms into Belarus, a close ally which shares a border with Ukraine. Battle lines are being drawn in the west as well. The Pentagon has placed 8,500 US troops on standby for possible deployment to Europe.
It does feel different in terms of what we've seen in the past of Russian exercises, etc. This is larger in scale and scope and the massing of forces than anything we have seen in recent memory, and I think you'd have to go back quite a while into the Cold War days to see something of this magnitude.
But Russia are adamant they don't want war. They're opposed to any possibility of Ukraine joining NATO and say the presence of NATO troops near its borders would threaten Russia's security.
If it depends on us, the Russian Federation, there will be no war. We don't want war, but we will not allow violation of our interests, and ignoring our interests, we will not always allow as well.
Ukrainian communities across Europe are fearfully watching the crisis from afar, including those in the UK.
Many Ukrainians are worried, apprehensive, because they know that any time Putin could say yes and troops will cross the border as they did in 2014. But Ukraine is not alone. We have the UK, we have the US and also allies on our border who are supplying us with arms and are standing in our defence. Hopefully, over the next few weeks, Putin will stand down and Ukrainians can live a normal life and aspire to rebuild their country, look towards Europe, European values, democracy, a free press and free elections.
Boris Johnson will visit Ukraine in the coming days and is also going to speak to Vladimir Putin, with the hope of preventing a conflict which would have ramifications around the world. Alice Porter, GB News.
And so it goes on, more and more tension all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, if more of our boys and girls get deployed, I mean, not just to Ukraine, but to the surrounding countries as well.
It starts to affect families in Britain, doesn't it? Not just Ukrainian ones. Coming up, we'll be getting more of your views on that and other stories that matter to you. First of all, though, the weather.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudy. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the clouds will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The winds are set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too. Now, the cloud and rain will spread across much of the UK later on today. Always windiest in the north. That's how your weather's shaping up.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning to you, it's 6:23. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and on your radio this morning. And loads of you getting in touch already today.
Lots of people talking about their cats, as you can imagine. We were talking about cats earlier because PETA, the animal rights organisation, animal rights, I suppose.
Yeah,
isn't
something
it?
like- yeah.
They said that if you have a cat, you should keep it indoors, both for the sake of the cat, because cats get run over. Something like 250,000
Something
cats
like that a year.
are run over on the roads a year, but also to protect wildlife. And I was surprised by that. I've never owned a cat, mind you, but I was surprised that you can keep a cat indoors, because I've always thought they are natural wanderers.
Well, I suppose if they get used to it, but I don't see how it's right. Though it works for some people. Andy's been in touch. Morning, Andy. He says, my little lady lives indoors and is perfectly happy. Can someone please tell her the posh recliner chair is mine, not hers?
Pets always do it, don't you? I've got the most comfortable chair in my living room is hogged by the dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, she won't let you on it, and she gets really knocked if you sit
When I got Timmy and I was buying a cat bed, and the lady at the RSPCA, because a rescue cat, said, you don't need to buy a cat bed. I bought one anyway.
Has he ever gone near it?
No. He just gets on my bed.
Yeah, of course, that's what he wants. Yeah. Rob in Cheshant, hi there. Is it Cheshunt or Cheshant?
Cheshant.
Cheshant, is it? Rob, let us know. He said, I had a pampered indoor rescue cat for 16 years. And after he died, animal shelters wouldn't let me rehome another because I have no garden. So I now have a Boston Terrier called Merlot. After the wine.
It's a good name.
Yeah.
Catherine, morning to you. Cats are very individual. Keeping a cat indoors who wants to go out and hunt is like keeping the elderly who want to live their lives locked up during the pandemic. Is this really for their own good? What's the point? Well, I agree. I agree. If cats want to go out, they should be allowed to.
Scott in York says Nero. That's a good name for a cat.
It is.
Nero has a cat flap. It's lockable, though, so we can manage his hunting of the local wildlife. And Keith in southern Hungary, has got two cats, Tony and Boney. Boney will never come in. Tony, the other cat, walks around like he owns the house and then walks out again. Great station. Good luck to GB News. Thank you very much.
Yeah. There's lots of you getting in touch as well on the cost of living crisis, which we're going to see a lot in the heating bills. I mean, to talk about the national insurance hike, of course, and whether that should go ahead. It looks like it will do now. But a lot of concern about the cost of fuel, which some people are saying they're seeing an increase already. It's likely to go up when that cap is lifted significantly in April. Jules says, I'm 60. Morning, Jules. I don't just worry about the heating, but also what I cook and when, trying to reduce the use of my oven and hob.
Tony, though, says stop complaining about it. There is a limit to what the government can do. They don't control gas prices, but they do control the green levy. They don't control petrol prices, but they do control the duty. A clue there. If the increasing prices in the shops are causing poverty in the UK, how about reducing the overseas aid and using that money to help people who genuinely having a problem with the cost of living?
Yeah. I mean, it's
a view, isn't it?
Is.
A lot of people, I think, will probably agree with that.
It is interesting. David is a pensioner. Morning, David. He says he is concerned about the rises, but we have become used to plentiful and cheap energy and heating every room in our house. We need to adjust to a new era where energy is a precious resource.
Yeah. God, maybe that is the way, but
I remember
it feels like you're moving backwards, but maybe not. Maybe you're valuing what you've got.
I remember ice on the inside of the windows and all that sort of thing.
I remember huddling around a fire, and where you were quite used in the winter. You were quite used to your front being warm and your back being absolutely frozen. And I remember we used to have night storage heaters. Do you remember those? Did you even know what night storage?
No, we didn't have a
they
night
were like
storage. We had a
great blocks of concrete that heat up and then release the heat during the day.
We had a paraffin heater. Remember getting the paraffin heater out? But then that was also back in the day, in the 70s, where the power kept going out and everyone had supplies of candles everywhere.
That's right.
And we've come
4-day week.
We've come a long way since then.
I used to do my homework to candlelight in the 4-day week. Yeah, I remember it very well. It's extraordinary. But you got through. I mean, people are very... People adapt, I guess, don't they? Although it's not easy if you cannot afford... If you're facing that dilemma about whether to heat or eat.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Sam in Cardiff says, every year there's a usual outcry about the cost of winter living. I'm 68 years old and pay my bills by direct debit, which means in the summer months I build up a credit. Means they're getting older, your money, though. So I want to meet one of those people who doesn't smoke, drink, gamble or holiday twice a year, who can't pay their winter bills, and I'll help them.
Jill says, at the age of 57, I grew up in a house without central heating and ice on the inside of my bedroom window. So I found it fairly easy to set my heating at 14 degrees. But I also recently bought a heated throw for when I'm sitting watching television. Those heated throws, they're good. The heated throw, she says, currently costs about 2p per hour to have on when I need it. Hopefully I will continue to be able to afford my energy bills when my fixed rate ends in April. Those heated throws are actually good. You can
have you got one?
You can, yes. I haven't used it, actually, not for ages. I got it for the bed, but it'd be brilliant to have downstairs.
So you plug them
you're
in,
watching,
sort of thing?
And it's a very mild heat, but it's what you need. And you can even get ones that look like a big Wellington boot, and you stick your feet in them.
Oh.
Yeah. They're quite
that
good.
sounds quite
and
nice.
And they sell them, I don't know what they say, about 2p an hour. That sounds more expensive than I thought, actually. But they are meant to be very, very low rate. And they do heat you where you are, I suppose, instead of heating the whole house.
You're not heating the room. And, of course, lots of people talking about hot water bottles. I like a hot water bottle.
I like a hot water bottle.
I did see one the other day when I was in Lytham. Morning, if you're in Lytham. And it was like, it was only thin, but it was about that long.
What, a hot water bottle?
Yeah, so it could like go down the whole length of your body, sort of thing. I thought that would be nice.
I've got hot water bottles.
30 quid though, which was a lot of money.
Yeah, hot water bottles are lovely. They're lovely to put in your bed when and then go to bed. But sitting watching telly with a hot water bottle on your lap, I just feel like I'm an old lady if I do that. That's the sign of being older, isn't it?
Is it?
I think so. Is it?
I don't
Or is it just sensible? Do you feel old if you've got a hot water bottle in your lap and one on your back?
Well, that
Oh,
sounds
nice.
quite nice.
But I think it is a sign of getting old. I don't know.
Oh, maybe. But then again, it's like buying comfortable shoes like Victoria Wood.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I have to buy comfortable shoes now.
Yeah. Slippers.
about
Nice
fashion.
woolly slippers.
Woolly slippers.
Fluffy slippers.
What shoes have you got on today? Oh,
Just got my pumps on.
you should see what goes on behind this.
They're actually jazz shoes, but they're just very old and they just look like pumps. No. But they're flat, total flat shoes.
One of these days we'll get us to stand up walking from the place.
My chiropractor said I've got to wear heels. He's ordered me to wear high heels, not very high, but medium.
Like kitten heels?
Yeah, he said because they're good for the muscles. You need to build up the muscles in your calves again.
Really?
That's what he
heels
said.
are meant to be bad for you.
Yeah, no, apparently I've been told to. So he'll be very cross with me if he's watching at the moment because I'm wearing flatties today.
Oh, right. Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. Stay with us here on GB Breakfast.
Yes, it is. GB News Breakfast with Stephen and Anne.
It's because I was thinking of the email address. I was going to say GB Views, but that's the email address.
Yes.
We've got plenty more to come for you, including all the Sunday papers. Stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Welcome back. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live across the UK and further afield indeed, but on your TV and radio in the UK and on the internet everywhere else.
Let's take a look at today's front pages, shall we? The Daily Mail the Mail on Sunday leads with Gove's Red Wall Revolution as the Levelling Up Secretary plans to splash billions on 20 new Boris boroughs. Boris boroughs? Oh. To rescue the Prime Minister's wobbly premiership.
Apparently it's a levelling up stunt. However, the Observer says the new £1.5 billion brownfield fund is actually part of money already set aside by the Chancellor in his spending review in the autumn, rather than being new money.
The Sunday Times says Chancellor Rishi Sunak has won the tug-of-war over the national insurance tax hike. He and the Prime Minister agree the £12 billion increase must go ahead in spite of a cost of living crisis.
Well, the PM has ordered a major military build-up in Eastern Europe as he warns Vladimir Putin that Britain and her allies will not tolerate Russian threats. The Sunday Express says this will lead to significant deployment of troops, gunships, missile systems and vessels to Estonia and Poland.
The Independent says Rishi Sunak is putting his finishing touches to a leadership bid as he tells allies that Partygate may be unsurvivable for the Prime Minister.
Number 10's work ethic being called into question again today as it's believed the Prime Minister's aide watched cricket at Lord's just 3 days before Kabul fell.
The Sun on Sunday exclusive says Prince Andrew is a forest grump after a woman said he shouted at her over wrongly cut trees. She was his gardener.
Well,
just to put that. No, I'm just putting it in context. He didn't just shout at any old woman. How dare you with those trees? She was gardening for him. Right. I'm not justifying him shouting at her, just putting it in context.
Surely she can't have been that bad, unless she just cut them down.
He was in a very bad mood, I think.
Yes, well, it's time to go through the papers then with Claire Muldoon, broadcaster and journalist, and the editor for Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Morning to you.
Good morning.
Tom, let's kick off with the Mail on Sunday, should we? And looking at a red wall revolution.
Yes, so we've had Boris bikes, we've had Boris buses, now we're getting Boris boroughs up and down the country as part of the levelling up agenda. So this is something we've heard a lot about ever since the last election. Really was supposed to be the flagship policy of this government, but kind of got scuppered by the pandemic and everything else that's happened since. So it's Michael Gove finally bringing forward this white paper. There's discussion of, again, these 20 areas around the country which will have new investment and an attempt to just spread opportunity around. But as you've already been talking about, Stephen, there's already questions about whether or not this is actually going to be transformative. A lot of old money being moved around.
Does it matter?
As long as the money is spent.
Yeah, as long as the money is getting to these areas that need it. Does it matter?
I think it definitely makes a difference that this is at least being focused on, that this fund at least exists. But the question is, how transformative is it actually going to be, I guess? Because for a long time, one thing that's plagued the government on this is this a policy or is this just a slogan? And at the moment, I think a lot of people feel it is just a slogan at this point.
Oh, interesting. What do you think, Claire?
Well, I think something has to be done, and I think politically he needs all the help he can get. Boris, the Prime Minister, and I think going forward the whole Conservative Party, if it has to have any credibility, because so much has been lost. I think anything at all to get into cities, council areas that are in abject poverty and heights of deprivation really do fundamentally need the help, and I think it's a social justice to help these boroughs. But the thing that concerns me, though, is they're talking about more mayors, more devolved powers. And we know what happens when power is devolved. It becomes even more toxic at times. And then there's less accountability.
You just create more bureaucracy somehow.
That's
don't
it.
you?
And then there's more layers of administration, which is layers of more cost.
But where they have, in the past, spent money on certain cities, I think of Glasgow particularly, where they really do spend money, it does transform a city, doesn't it?
And I mean, you talk about Glasgow, unfortunately, fortunately I am from there, but the SNP have absolutely killed Scotland and cities in Scotland. So that's a complete devolved power. So in terms of putting money in, there has to be accountability, and that's where I think this might have a downfall. And we spoke about we've been speaking about HS2. Is that the light that will shine on the north? I think we need to get our city, our infrastructure correct first. And I think then by doing that, investing in teaching, social care, which we're just about to move on to here, and then I think it will be moves towards helping people.
Well, as you say, social care and the Sunday Times, this is all down to the national insurance hike.
Yep.
£12 billion, which they say they need to fund social care, I mean, pretty specifically. There's been a battle between number 10 and number 11 over this one.
There has, but the two of them have now released a joint statement saying that it will indeed go ahead. Now, we can't be naive on this. We've had 2 years of furlough payments. The cash is not, it has to come from somewhere. It's not a charitable donation. It has to be paid back to the coffers of the country. This is one way of doing it. We have a demographic now that is living longer due to healthcare, education, and better nutrition. We're living longer as a nation. We need to be taken care of.
But it's the fact that it's falling in the middle of this this huge cost of living hike.
There's never going to be a good time. There is never going to be a good time. And do you remember the Lib Dems wanted to increase national insurance by 1 pence to invest that in tertiary education and indeed secondary education? No one wanted it. It wasn't a vote pleaser for them. And yet now we're faced with this. If the Chancellor had to release the 40% VAT on fuels, it would save him £12 million or something like that. Or 12 billion. It's not enough to repay back everything that's been repaid out. And this is one way of doing it.
So even though to us the timing looks bad because everybody's having to face other cost of living problems, is this politically the right time for them to say, right, we've got to get on with the job now?
I think they do have to do that, and also because the issue is not just the cost of living crisis for voters. The other big bread and butter issue, I think, is the NHS waiting list. I mean, almost everyone in the country in a few months' time will know someone who is waiting for a quite important procedure, operation, screening, all the rest of it. That's the other key thing they have to sort out if they're going to get a grip over these things. So it is important that they at least show we've got this sustainably funded, we've got this under control. And whilst it might not please some of the backbenchers, it would be impossible to think how they could U-turn from this at this point.
Honestly, you wouldn't want to be a politician, would you?
No.
And in the Sunday Express, John, no, quite right. Looking at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, and of course now the possibility, we're already sending people out there, but now doubling the number of troops sent to neighbouring countries, in Poland and Estonia particularly.
Exactly. So there's a 900-strong British battle group which has been sent to Estonia, which will bring the general numbers up to double what they currently are, as well as some rocket artillery, kind of anti-tank weapons, and all the rest of it. In the midst of this kind of build-up of tensions between Ukraine and Russia, I mean, it's worth pointing out these are relatively sort of small numbers. I think you could easily suggest this is largely a kind of gesture on behalf of Boris Johnson, and it's quite politically convenient. I think it's fair to say, ever since Partygate really started rising up again last week.
You only have to look at the front of that Sunday Express. Suddenly, Prime Minister is looking very prime ministerial, isn't he? Which one doesn't want to use the word convenient, but really, because obviously, lives are at risk.
He wouldn't be the first Prime Minister to do this.
No,
use a
absolutely.
foreign conflict, try and change the story.
Oh, I mean, I know these things have to be done, but someone whose other half is very likely to be sent out there doesn't fill me with a lot of joy.
No, certainly not.
Got to be honest. Claire, in the Telegraph, Sunday Telegraph, I don't know what to make of this. All talk about the number 10 work ethic and what aides were doing at the time when the Kabul was falling. Is this a fair criticism to make?
Do you know what? Everything that's coming out about this Partygate, only one thing that shines out for the Prime Minister, what an excellent employee he is. You've got great benefits at work. You can, drink on the job. You can go to the cricket.
You can ignore all the rules that the rest of us had to comply with.
Yes. And you can basically make them up as you want, as you go along. What have we got here? It's his aide went to a cricket match 3 days before Kabul fell. Yes, but the same aide allegedly told Dominic Raab to return home from his Cypriot holiday. And then Dominic Raab came back, and then weeks later, he went on the Saturday to the cricket again. Now, people go and watch cricket, people love cricket, people go and fine. I don't have an issue with that. But this man's job was he was an aide to Boris Johnson. 3 days before the Afghan troops were removed from Kabul by the Americans haphazardly, and then we did the same. These front pages now of these papers, I'm not shocked anymore. I'm completely desensitized by it.
If he had a day off, is it so bad that he went to the cricket?
I think, on the one hand, there's a lot of briefing against this gentleman down at the moment, so we do have to take these things with a pinch of salt. But I think, just to Claire's point, if it was just him, that would be one thing. But, of course, Dominic Raab was on holiday. We know that the leading civil servants in all the relevant departments also happen to be working from holiday. All of this discussion about people working from home during the fall of Kabul, you put all of that together and you do get a pretty bleak picture as to how
everything was governed and how serious they were actually taking it.
It's a sort of laziness culture.
Yes.
Is it within Number 10? Or is it, as you were saying, is it, is it the right way to do it? Is it the right way to be an employer?
Well, I wouldn't say so. I think he's got a very, very important job to do by the people who voted him into this country.
And the people around him have too, haven't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
Maybe we should go for breakfast at 8 o'clock and see if the boss minds.
Just let the programme get on with itself. We'll leave you to it if you don't mind.
You never know.
Yeah.
We will leave you to it for the time being. Claire Muldoon, Tom Slater, thank you very much. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
Yeah. Meanwhile, today marks the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. It was an event that saw 13 people shot dead and one person fatally wounded after members of the Army's Parachute Regiment opened fire on civil rights demonstrators in the Bogside, a predominantly Catholic part of Londonderry.
Well, about 15,000 people had gathered in the Cregan area of Londonderry on the morning of the 30th of January 1972. They were there to take part in a civil rights march that was protesting against a new law giving the authorities the power to imprison people without trial.
Well, we're joined now by Professor Richard Burke, who's Professor of the History of Political Thought at the University of Cambridge. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Hello. Why has there never been a sort of satisfactory inquiry into the matter and people's worries actually dealt with properly? Why has there never been closure on this event?
Well, I think it's true to say that there hasn't been closure, but there has been, I think, what most people would describe as a satisfactory inquiry. First of all, it's worth pointing out that there was an original inquiry held in April 1972, so a matter of months after the killings, and that produced a report known as the Widgery Report. That has generally been received as a sort of whitewash report, and in response, after the Good Friday Agreement in 1998, it was agreed, therefore, to set up a second inquiry, and that sat from 1998 to 2012, and that did come up with an alternative interpretation of events which held the army to be responsible in a way that was not the verdict in 1972 itself. So I think most people would accept that the Savile inquiry did indeed give a more or less accurate representation of events, as a result of which soldiers were held to be culpable and the marchers themselves on that day to be innocent and as having posed no threat. However, no soldiers have been prosecuted for what took place. Now, I think that's still an open wound. So I don't think it's accurate to say there's been no inquiry, but there's been no closure because there's been no prosecutions.
Prosecution necessary? I mean, there is an argument to say if the army was at fault and if politics was at fault, if you like, why blame the individual soldiers for all of this? But I mean, whichever way you look at it, there's going to be one side of this which is never satisfied.
Well, I don't think it's quite right to say there's going to be one side that's never satisfied. I think there was a lot of satisfaction that arose out of the Savile inquiry. So I don't think it's a case of it not being possible to do anything. As to whether soldiers should be prosecuted, well, that's a legal question. And I suppose you and your viewers might want to ask yourselves whether, if in a liberal democracy, the army shoots its own citizens, whether there should be no prosecutions of individual soldiers, or whether in some sense the army should be held to account, or whether the government itself should just apologise. The government did apologise under David Cameron. Perhaps some people would expect that would close the matter, but, you know, I mean, technically there was the murder of UK citizens by the British Army that took place in 1972. I perfectly understand that it may be pose a military issue, an issue of military command in the long term, if a government starts prosecuting its own soldiers. I don't say there's no issue there at all, but I suppose it's for all of us to ask ourselves whether, on the other hand, it's appropriate for such an event to take place without any ascription of responsibility. I think rather than the commanding officers being directly responsible, it looks like the soldiers themselves bear a greater measure of guilt. So, you know, as I say, it's a legal question. There's been no legal proceedings, so it's difficult to answer the question directly, other than to say, you know, it's a question we can all ask ourselves and, you know, come to the appropriate conclusion.
What do you think is the political thought behind this now, to let it go on and on? I mean, it's 50 years ago. However, there are still people there who lost brothers and sisters and, you know, relatives for whom 50 years is a very short time. But do you think the political thought is just to let it rest now, to let it go?
Well, I think, I think the hope and the expectation is that, you know, over time, especially as a result of political redress, which has clearly taken place in the aftermath of the Good Friday Agreement, that there will be an acceptance all around that there's a need to move on. And I think, you know, the Savile inquiry and the Cameron apology made very major contributions to this. There's been no admission of army culpability on the part of the commanding officer on the day, for instance, Colonel Derek Wilford, but I don't think that's going to be forthcoming. There's always going to be different interpretations. But I think it'd be wrong to think that one is sort of stuck in a time warp here with no development and movement. I think the situation is moving on. But of course, it's an open wound, and this is the 50th anniversary. So there's still obviously going to be some species of preoccupation. I mean, cultures celebrate and memorialize outstanding events that have befallen them, you know, in all cultures. So I don't think there's anything particularly unusual there.
Okay.
Certainly was a terrible day, wasn't it?
Professor Richard Burke from the University of Cambridge, thanks very much indeed.
Now, what's going on in Australia?
Oh, yes. Aidan
How about the tennis, Aidan?
How you doing, okay?
What's happening? Has he started playing yet?
No, not yet. No, 8:30 our time. We're expected to see the game. We'll see the match get underway. But yeah, Nadal, as we said yesterday, going for a number 21 Grand Slam title. As we were all thinking about Djokovic being able to do this a couple of weeks ago. No one really considered Nadal persistent foot injuries. He was doubting whether he could even compete at the top level going into this year. So to find himself in a final of an Australian Open just 2 weeks after, well, I'd say 2 weeks after. I mean, it's still going on, the Novak Djokovic saga, isn't it? In some ways, it's not really reached a definite conclusion. We don't even know what his future is going to hold. But don't rule out Daniil Medvedev. This is the US Open champion.
It's no walkover, is it?
Certainly not. Let's consider something as well. September, so what, 4 months ago, he wiped the floor with Novak Djokovic in the US Open final. 6-4, 6-4, 6-4.
So
hard courts, similar conditions to today. No pressure on him going into today. Yes, he's the US Open champion, but everyone is expecting a procession for Rafa Nadal, particularly those who don't really know tennis. They just know that Rafa Nadal is a big name.
Yeah.
He's got the pedigree. He's got an opportunity to become undisputably the greatest player of all time today, and they assume he's going to do it. I still think Medvedev's going to do it myself.
Do you really?
Yeah, we'll know in a couple of hours, won't we? So.
Yeah.
Well, I say a couple of hours.
More than a couple of hours.
Well, it could go to 5 sets.
Yeah, exactly. Should do, shouldn't it?
Let's hope so. Yeah. It'd be nice to get a conclusion before we go off air, though.
Yes, it would. Yes.
Meanwhile, the Barty party underway.
Well, look, someone was watching GBNews yesterday. I mean, look, it's a Barty party. This is Mike Dixon, very experienced tennis correspondent for the Mail on Sunday, and he's just charting her success, her rise over the last few years.
I mean,
and just
she
talking
made history, didn't she?
Yeah, I mean, look, 26. She's not a kid, but she's shown great proficiency on all surfaces. You're looking now. We don't know whether Serena Williams is going to return to the court, but looking at it pound for pound, we're thinking this could be the ushering in of a new era of dominance. We hope that Emma Raducanu will challenge her. Obviously, she's got a lot, giving away a lot in terms of age. And also, I should say, 4.2 million Australian player, male or female, to win a Grand Slam yesterday in 44 years since Chris O'Neill did it back in 1978. And that includes, we consider the men who haven't done it in that time: Pat Cash, Mark Philippoussis, Leighton Hewitt, Patrick Rafter. These guys were giants, galacticos of their sport, but they did not win a slam on home soil. They did it everywhere else. They did it in France. They did it in.
I tell you what, they did her proud as well. We've just seen pictures. For everybody listening on the radio, we've just seen pictures of her holding the trophy. It's the size of her almost.
I know. Well, they do that.
Massive trophy. You win Wimbledon, you just get a dish.
You do, yeah, exactly. The prize money is comparable, though, thankfully.
Yeah.
But,
what are you looking at?
You're looking at around about 500. No, hang on. It's gone up to more than that. It's around about £1 million now. Around about there. I'll get that checked for you next time. So it does change year to year, but it's been equal pay for a number of years now between the male and female sections as well.
Oh, that's a lot of money for playing a tennis match, isn't it?
Yeah, you have to be pretty good to get it. Then.
You've got to pay more than one, though, Steve.
You have to be unusually good to get it.
Some would say, as I say, Ash Barty had quite an easy run to the final, so some would argue they should only play one game because it was in the final. But no, as I say, Nadal. All eyes on Nadal today. It's going to be.
By the way, last time we saw you, you were off to the football. How did it go?
Oh, well, I mean...
sorry, shouldn't have asked.
No, it was 4-0. The only problem was I was getting up so early yesterday. I mean, you
didn't fall asleep in the middle
of it.
I
was a little bit sleepy second. We won 4-0.
Oh, you won?
We won 4-0. It was absolutely outstanding. I was hyper until half-time.
But you sort of missed it.
And no, I didn't miss it. We were 3-0 at half-time. I wouldn't say that. But in the second half, I was just blearing a little bit. Just going
Is that because there was hospitality food?
Well, there might have been some red wine. You get a part of your package. You get 2 glasses of red wine. That was enough to just knock me out at half-time. But yeah, we won 4-0. Keep your eye. The good days are back. It was
in my breakfast television days, you were lucky enough to get Wimbledon final tickets, and I went with Nick Owen. And I turned halfway through. It was a wonderful match. He was absolutely out for the count.
I was with Nick Owen once at Luton Town, and he didn't get into his own lounge. They didn't recognise him.
Oh, bless.
What a shame. Legend, Nick Owen.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Good morning, Nick. I doubt he's up this early.
No.
If he's not presenting it, he doesn't want to get up that early.
Don't blame you. No. Don't blame you. Aidan McGee, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on. Stay with us. There's much more to come in the show, including your views, all your views. Plus, we're going to be talking to Winston Churchill, believe it or not.
Yeah, we are.
So here's the weather. And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the clouds will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning to you, 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live across the whole of the UK on both your TV and your radio. And live online, of course, across the world.
Yeah, so wherever you are, you can take us with you today. Coming up for you this morning.
The Sunday Times reports that the Chancellor has won a tug of war over the hike in national insurance. In a joint article, the Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak insist they're still tax-cutting Conservatives.
Well, the PM is also considering doubling the number of troops that Britain has in Eastern Europe amid escalating tensions over Ukraine. We'll hear this morning from Ukrainians living in the UK about how it's affecting them.
Many Ukrainians are worried, apprehensive, because they know that any time Putin could say yes and troops would cross the border as they did in 2014.
And today marks the anniversary of the day that Britain bid farewell to its greatest ever leader, you might say, Sir Winston Churchill. The former Prime Minister's funeral took place 57 years ago today.
Yeah, and to mark that, we're going to be joined later in the programme by a Winston Churchill impersonator. Here he is. I mean, it's quite remarkable. I can't wait to
Look, he's still fighting them on the beaches there. There he is, the back of his car.
He's quite a character.
Yeah, he is.
Don't forget, this is all about you. We want to hear your thoughts on anything we're talking about today or something completely different. If you like, you can drop us an email, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or send us a tweet @gbnews. We've got to talk cats.
Yeah, we've got to talk cats because we've been discussing this because PETA, the organisation for against cruelty for animals, says that we should keep cats indoors for their own protection and to protect birds and small mammals. And yesterday on Twitter, you put out a photograph of your
Yes, I was telling
your cat.
I was telling Timmy, who's a 14-year-old rescue cat.
Is he 14? That's a good age, isn't it?
It's a good age. He's got a while to go yet, though. Frisky.
Oh, I'm sure.
And just finding out what he thought of it, and I can tell you he wasn't very impressed, despite me smiling away.
You wouldn't want to be kept indoors. He wouldn't want to.
Oh, no. No. I mean, he really likes to be out, even at his old age. I mean, he's in and out all the time, but he's not hunting anything.
You don't know.
Well,
you don't know what he gets up to, do you?
I don't think
just because he doesn't bring it home, you don't know.
No, he doesn't.
Charlotte says, whilst Meg has to be encouraged to move anywhere away from her blankets at the moment. In summer, it would be impossible to keep her in, and she thinks cruel.
Yeah, I'd
she
agree.
loves her garden, apparently, and catching crickets.
Oh, she's beautiful. Look at that.
God, catching a cricket, you'd have to be quite
Yeah,
fast,
she
wouldn't
must
you?
be quite nimble. Let's look at Colombo, who
Oh, what a lovely picture.
Colombo owns the human Nadine, who says that Colombo isn't impressed with all this art.
I love the name Colombo.
It's a
as
great
well.
name.
We had Nero the cat earlier, and that's Colombo. I think he's beautiful.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Ruth also says her cat Doug doesn't like the idea of staying in full time at all. No, it's a very cross look on Doug's face.
Love that. Absolutely love it.
Keep those photographs coming in, please. It's lovely. And you clearly have some wonderful names for animals. I think it's just lovely. So keep those coming in. Just send them to gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Yeah, lovely stuff. Now, our main news this morning, and Boris Johnson will telephone the Russian President Vladimir Putin and visit Eastern Europe in the coming days as the UK steps up its diplomatic efforts to resolve the Ukraine border crisis.
Russia has placed about 100,000 troops, tanks, artillery and missiles near Ukraine's border, but denies, of course, that it plans to invade, that Ukraine obviously borders both Russia and the EU. That's what makes it politically such a hot potato, if you like.
Well, Alice Porter looks now at the crisis and just how it's affecting Ukrainians here in the UK.
The rumblings of war. This weekend, Russia moved more troops and arms into Belarus, a close ally which shares a border with Ukraine. Battle lines are being drawn in the west as well. The Pentagon has placed 8,500 US troops on standby for possible deployment to Europe.
It does feel different in terms of what we've seen in the past of Russian exercises, etc. This is larger in scale and scope and the massing of forces than anything we have seen in recent memory, and I think you'd have to go back quite a while into the Cold War days to see something of this magnitude.
But Russia are adamant they don't want war. They're opposed to any possibility of Ukraine joining NATO and say the presence of NATO troops near its borders would threaten Russia's security.
If it depends on us, the Russian Federation, there will be no war. We don't want war, but we will not allow violation of our interests, and ignoring our interests, we will not always allow as well.
Ukrainian communities across Europe are fearfully watching the crisis from afar, including those in the UK.
Many Ukrainians are worried, apprehensive, because they know that any time Putin could say yes and troops would cross the border, as they did in 2014. But Ukraine is not alone. We have the UK, we have the US and also allies on our border who are supplying us with arms and are standing in our defence. Hopefully, over the next few weeks, Putin will stand down and Ukrainians can live a normal life and aspire to rebuild their country, look towards Europe, European values, democracy, a free press and free elections.
Boris Johnson will visit Ukraine in the coming days and is also going to speak to Vladimir Putin with the hope of preventing a conflict which would have ramifications around the world. Alice Porter, GB News.
Well, let's talk to former senior British Army General Barney White-Spunner. Good to talk to you this morning. I mean, do you think that this move to send more British troops to Ukraine and to Estonia and Poland will have an impact, will affect how Vladimir Putin views this?
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, arguably, Putin's sort of got himself into a little bit of a muddle with this, because he's had a fairly easy run, if you like, in things he's done done recently. He's seen the West get out of Afghanistan sort of rather quickly, and not close the operation particularly successfully. So, but actually now he's got himself into a position where he's coming up against opposition. I mean, personally, if you are serious about invading somebody else's country, you tend not to announce it several months beforehand to the world's press. So I think there is an element, obviously, of sort of bluff going on here. But if that bluff is called, then arguably it could be quite dangerous, because where does he sort of go from here, if you see what I mean? One thing I think Putin can't take is a long drawn-out guerrilla war in Ukraine. I mean, you've got a Russian military, you've got a Russia that's got what happened in Afghanistan still very much to the front of its thoughts. It wasn't that long ago, and you like that brought down the previous Soviet regime. So I think from Putin's point of view, actually the options are possibly closing in a bit, but the danger is that he might feel he's got to do something. So I think what the West standing up to him, the West actually taking a strong line, is really important. So yeah, I do think it'll make a difference.
NATO seems to be putting up a united front, even if it's bluff, as you say, but they do seem to be united. Although Germany, which you would think would be key, doesn't seem to be very involved in this crisis. What is their point of view?
Yeah, I mean, let's just look at that from 2 points of view. So first of all, sort of from a German point of view, I mean, Germany would argue that actually, they're unique in sort of the Western family nations, and they have to look east and west. I mean, Germany's always been, if you like, on the sort of frontier of Europe. It's always been the country that's got to sort of face off Russia, and has been since the earliest days. So they would argue that you need to see things. They see things differently. They have to have a sort of some degree of rapprochement. There's obviously huge Russian involvement in the German economy. But then you get this issue of Germans say to you about sort of war guilt, if you like, that given our history, given what happened in those 12 terrible years between 1933 and 1945, we just don't have that sort of moral freedom of action. And thirdly, of course, they've got an energy sector which is very dependent on Russia. Now, you could argue that's our own fault. I mean, it was a conscious decision to back out of a nuclear program. But actually, if you look at just how dependent they are on Russia for energy, it is very dependent. I mean, it's about a third of our gas. We've got Russian companies who own a lot of the gas storage in Germany. About half German households, if you like, are heated on Russian gas, and also crude oil and coal. So that, if you like, is one side of the argument. But then there is a counter, to my mind, stronger argument, which says, yeah, okay, all very well, but the Second World War ended very nearly 80 years ago. And you can't sort of carry on necessarily making that argument. And there's a big difference between aggression and actually deterring aggressors. And if you look at German post-war history, and you look at some of those great German chancellors, you can't quite see them taking quite such a sort of backseat as is happening at the moment. Imagine Willy Brandt, that great ex-mayor of Berlin, and then again SPD chancellor, same party as Scholz. You can't quite see him being quite so retiring about this. So I think there is the problem. I think Germany does need to take a stronger line. I think it's really important that they do, because I think Putin will listen to that. And I think really the West should be doing all they can to encourage them.
General, for jumping in, but isn't there an argument to be made of a comparatively simple solution here, which would be if Ukraine said it did not want to join NATO, if it pulled out of that plan to join NATO, but NATO has still got its back, as it were, wouldn't that be enough to, at least for now, pacify Moscow?
Well, I think it very possibly could. I mean, the question really is whether Ukraine's prepared to do that. And that is something we don't know. I mean, seen from a sort of Putin point of view, I mean, there is a motivation, we think, nobody really knows, that Putin has, which is that Russia did very badly after the end of the Cold War, that actually Russia's been badly treated by the West, if you like. It's sort of 1989 was some sort of repeat of Versailles, and that Russia has been put in a very difficult position. And he will see what's happening in Ukraine and actually further afield from that. I mean, I don't think it's limited necessarily just to Ukraine. He sees it as a severe limiting of Russian influence. And he also sees over the last sort of decade, he's seen a West that hasn't been particularly resolute to act. I mean, he's been able to do what he's wanted in Kazakhstan, in Belarus. As I said earlier, he's seen us pull out of Afghanistan in a pretty unedifying way. So what he is after is that, if you like, his re-establishment of Russia's hegemony, Russia's sort of dominance in an area which he would argue traditionally always has been Russian sphere of influence. And I mean, Crimea has, to be fair, been under Russian influence for a very long time. So yeah, it could be. But I think we need something like that. Whether Ukrainians actually will do that, I mean, there's no reason necessarily why they shouldn't take their own sovereign decisions like any other nation.
OK, look, General White, really good to speak to you this morning. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Let's bring you up to date then with the news. Prime Minister is looking at doubling the number of troops deployed to strengthen Europe's borders in the face of rising Russian aggression. Boris Johnson said it would send a clear message to the Kremlin that we will not tolerate their destabilising activity.
Well, meanwhile, Boris Johnson has committed to the national insurance increase set to go ahead in April. The Prime Minister has been under pressure from some of his party to scrap or delay the measure in the midst of a cost of living crisis. It's a 1.25% rise designed to tackle COVID-induced NHS backlog and reform social care.
The government says Wolverhampton and Sheffield will be the first of 20 disadvantaged areas to gain access to a £1.5 billion fund. Part of levelling up plans, the money will be used to develop new neighbourhoods on brownfield sites.
A second storm is set to hit the northern half of the UK today. Later on, Storm Corrie could bring winds of up to 90 miles an hour. Meanwhile, thousands of homes in the northeast of England are still without power this morning after Storm Malik battered the country yesterday. Many people have said it's like living in the dark ages. A 60-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy were killed by the storm.
And the COVID vaccine rollout has been extended to around 50,000 children aged between 5 and 11. Children who are most at risk of COVID or who are living with someone who's vulnerable will be offered the jab. They'll actually be given 2 Pfizer vaccines, 8 weeks apart, and the dose will be a third of the amount used for adults.
On the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the former leader of the Labour Party says it's an outrage that no one has been convicted for the murders. Jeremy Corbyn has also condemned government plans to ban prosecutions for Troubles killings. The Prime Minister tweeted, "We must learn from the past, reconcile and build a peaceful future for people in Northern Ireland." Love to hear. Oh, sorry, go on.
No.
I was just going to say, I'd love to hear from you if you're in either Wolverhampton or Sheffield this morning.
Do you feel you're in a disadvantaged area, and do you want to become a Boris borough?
A Boris borough, yeah, but it is about redeveloping brownfield sites, which is a good thing. Because we seem to build on greenfield sites, left, right,
rather than
centre.
brownfield. I think because brownfield sites have to be dealt with. I don't know, they have to be
decontaminated,
detoxified, or whatever it is. So maybe it needs more investment, more hard work.
Yeah,
but that's what's needed.
Better that than ripping up our fields.
Yes, quite right. Absolutely.
If you're there, let us know what you think.
Now, this is fascinating because you might think the timing is all wrong, but Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have jointly committed to the controversial increase in national insurance, despite the Prime Minister's recent dip in the polls.
Well, the Chancellor said the £12 billion a year tax rise was the right plan to fix the health and social care system, which we know has been heavily strained and damaged by the COVID pandemic.
Well, with us now to analyse what consequences this could have for Boris and Rishi is political commentator and former MEP for the East of England, Patrick O'Flynn. Hello, Patrick.
Morning, Anne. Good morning, Stephen.
Hello. Do you think the timing's all wrong, or is it simply something they couldn't avoid because we need the money?
Well, I think they could have avoided it on purely financial criteria, because they could have delayed it a year. And the experts say, this is quite a long-term fix for a major long-term problem. But I think in terms of credibility of the government, particularly with financial markets watching, but also, if you like, the political market. Is the government a shambles? Is the government in chaos? Does the government U-turn every time anyone puts on any pressure at all? Is the Prime Minister too weak to get his way? All those questions would have been back in play if they'd U-turned. And I think Rishi Sunak is certainly very concerned about his own credibility. So I think probably, looking in the widest terms, this is a correct decision. We might even take it as a sign of a little bit of confidence returning among Boris Johnson's key allies, that he can tough out the Partygate allegations.
But people up and down the country could be banging their heads against the wall at this, because money's tight and it's going to get tighter in April. Now, this may be a necessary tax increase in some respects, but does that not give the Chancellor and the PM a bit of leeway when it comes to something like the green levy on energy bills?
In terms that they might cut or freeze or do something positive with a green levy for people's pockets, I would hope so. That certainly wouldn't go down very well with some of the, if I can use a pejorative term, sort of rich kid advisors around the Prime Minister, who seem to be absolutely obsessed with achieving carbon net zero the day after tomorrow. But I think there does need to be, and will be, no doubt, a concentrated package of measures to help people with the cost of living crisis. I don't know exactly what those will be, but I'm sure Rishi Sunak will outline 3 or 4 things, probably including at least 1 or 2 surprises, overshooting expectations in his budget, which I think is due in March sometime.
It's interesting, isn't it, that the Prime Minister and the Chancellor have put up a united front on this one?
It certainly is. And traditionally, that's the fault line which really causes governments great problems and almost indicates to the public that the regime is coming towards its end days, is when the Chancellor and Prime Minister fall out. So I think this joint article and the joint approach and confirming a flagship policy will potentially be part of a bit of a fight back by the government, albeit, it's not exactly, full of joys for consumers and taxpayers.
Patrick, what do you make? We get a lot of emails through saying that a lot of this pressure against the Prime Minister, I mean, this is from people who want him to stay, but a lot of pressure against the Prime Minister is a way of trying to reverse Brexit. If Boris isn't there, then Brexit could somehow be backtracked. I mean, obviously, Michael Heseltine sort of raised the spectre of that a few days ago. Does that hold any water for you?
Well, I think, Michael Heseltine and Andrew Adonis, are on probably the far fringe of the rejoin movement, and they see it as that. I don't think it's quite that cut and dried. I do think that the sort of ultra Remainers, rejoiners, are very hostile to the Prime Minister for obvious reasons. And I do think, the majority of the establishment figures out to do in Boris Johnson haven't forgiven him for being the sort of one of the dynamic forces behind Brexit. So I think that's certainly true. Some of the people being put up as potential replacements, like Jeremy Hunt or Tom Tugendhat, they're very much sort of home counties, establishment, Tory Remainer type. So I certainly think there's a dimension to that. Some of the media commentators like Matthew Parris putting the boot in the Times again yesterday. I do think, the Brexit verdict cuts very deep with them. And the fact that Boris Johnson, which I think is his biggest virtue, put his neck on the block to get it delivered after the establishment tried to block it. I think they're very bitter about that. So I think it is a motivating factor, but I don't think it's as simple as were the Prime Minister to fall, that the Remain forces would be in a position to drive us back into the EU anytime soon.
OK. Patrick O'Flynn, good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, it's Teresa has emailed in and said the NHS needs an awful lot more than just the small increase in national insurance. Morale is low, wage increases are needed. Too much has been left for too long. I don't know how the people are going to survive.
Yeah, it's a very worrying time. Get in touch with your thoughts, gbviews@gbnews.uk. And coming up, we'll have more of your views, and we'll also take you through the Sunday papers. And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
This 7:26. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne on your TV and your radio right across the UK. Good morning to you.
Yeah, good morning to you, and we'd love to hear from you how you are feeling as we talk more and more about the cost of living going up and the fact that Boris and Rishi Sunak now are united in saying the national insurance hike is going to happen. No ifs, no buts, they said. It's becoming a worry to everybody. Barbara says at 71, I don't want to go back to the old days where only one room in the house is warm. I thought we'd moved on from that. Let's not go back. And she says, personally, I couldn't have my heating at 14 degrees. That's far too cold. Somebody a bit earlier on was saying she keeps her house at 14.
Jill.
But that sounds quite cold to me.
It's cold. I couldn't do 14 degrees, Jill. I have the car higher than that.
And Betty in Highcliffe in Dorset says, if you part fill a hot water bottle and sit with your feet on it, that'll warm you up in no time because heat rises.
Yeah.
Actually, it's the old adage, isn't it? If you look after the extremities, that's gloves, socks, good pair of shoes, and even a hat, apparently. That's the way to keep warm.
Yeah. Apparently so. Lots of you just getting in touch saying sort of fairly nice things, which is lovely. Sandy from Lincoln says, loving the show, thank you. Makes a pleasant change to watch a balanced news show. That's because we don't agree on everything, do we? No. We don't agree on everything, I'm quite sure. And you've got to...
But we disagree in a grown-up way. Isn't that the right phrase? I think that's a good phrase. Yeah.
But, you know, it's the way forward. At least you can talk about everything. Everything should be up for discussion. Sandy, though, says, I'm sick of this Boris bashing on other channels. OK, he hasn't got everything right, but who would have wanted his job this last 2 years? Now, I think that's a very valid point.
Yeah, but if you get voted in and you become Prime Minister, you have to be able to deal with any eventuality, don't you?
Well, you do, but I do sort of think it's very easy to jump on and criticise people without thinking, what on earth would you do? It's like with an opposition, whoever's in opposition, I hate it when they just criticise but don't say, well, what would you do instead?
Yes. Yeah.
Because you've got to provide an alternative, haven't you?
And that's just bashing, yeah. And a lot of that goes on. It's posturing, isn't it? I think a lot of politicians do that and shouldn't. Do get in touch as well about your cats. We're really enjoying your cat pictures. So just send it into gbviews@gbnews.uk. But we've been talking about whether or not cats should be indoor animals, because the animal organisation PETA says actually all cats should be kept indoors, both for their own health and safety, but also because of birds, the number of birds and little mammals that they kill. And Barry says, morning guys, I was working in Palm Springs in November and I was amazed my friend's cat, about 5 years old, is never allowed outdoors. The cat is like a dog, it actually comes to you when you call it.
Well.
Then he says, any chance of a GB mug? I fancy a cuppa.
Yes, the answer to that is yes.
Are they online yet?
They're not online yet, but we are opening an online shop, so you can buy mugs and I don't know what else you can buy.
No, mugs.
T-shirts and mouse mats, probably. But you can buy a GB News mug, so that's good.
Nobody uses mouse mats anymore, do they?
Well, some people do. I mean, I don't, to be fair. Archie says, my cat is 16. No way would I keep her in. She doesn't go out every day and never goes out every night. Never goes out at night. But it is natural for them to go out. And I agree. And if they want to go out, I think you should let them.
Calvin says our cats have free access via either floor and don't bring back any vermin or birds because they're properly fed. But they don't hunt because they're hungry necessarily, do they? They just hunt because it's an instinct.
Yeah, but
and is it right to deny them that instinct?
I suppose they might hunt less if they're well fed. Maybe that's the argument. John, on the other hand, says, I don't like cats.
Oh.
They should be kept inside and not allowed to trespass in mine and other gardens.
Yeah, they do that, don't they? They choose where to go. So, I mean, they tend not to mess in their own patch. They go next door to, don't they?
I don't know where Timmy goes, but it's not.
No, oh, great. I'm glad I don't live next door to you.
The neighbours have never complained.
No.
They've never complained.
Okay. I say what cats do that dogs don't do is at least they go somewhere where you can't see.
Yeah, they bury it.
Yeah, dogs don't.
Dogs don't do that. No, I don't fancy...
Let's not go into that. It's not something we really want to talk about at breakfast time, is it really?
No, it's not. Stay with us, though, because there's lots more still to come, including a lively look at the Sunday papers. Stay with us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
And Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It's 7:33. A very good morning to you if you've just joined us, but welcome back if you've been watching all morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, and we're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio.
Yes, and the nice thing about that is we keep saying it, but if you're watching on the TV and you need to go out, you can stay with us.
Yeah, you don't have to leave us behind.
Yeah, and you don't have to look at us that way either, which is probably a bonus.
Yes, it probably is. This time in the morning.
Let's have a look at the front pages for you. We'll start with the Mail on Sunday.
The Mail leads, yes, with Gove's Red Wall revolution as the Levelling Up Secretary plans to splash billions on 20 new Boris boroughs to rescue the Prime Minister's wobbly premiership.
Moving on to the Observer, they say it's just a stunt because that new £1.5 billion brownfield fund is actually part of money already set aside by the Chancellor in his autumn spending review, rather than it being what they call new money.
The Sunday Times says Chancellor Rishi Sunak has won the tug-of-war over the national insurance tax hike. He and the Prime Minister now agree that the £12 billion increase must go ahead in spite of cost of living worries.
Well, Boris Johnson has ordered a major military build-up in Eastern Europe as he warns Vladimir Putin that Britain and her allies will not tolerate Russian threats. The Sunday Express says this will lead to significant deployments of troops, gunships, missile systems and vessels to Estonia and Poland.
Gosh, it's Cold War talk, isn't it? The Independent says Rishi Sunak is putting his finishing touches to a leadership bid as he tells allies that Partygate may be unsurvivable for Boris Johnson.
Number 10's work ethic is being called into question as it's believed the Prime Minister's aide watched cricket at Lord's just 3 days before Kabul fell.
Well, it's time to go through the papers now, and joining us this morning is Claire Muldoon, broadcaster and journalist, as well as the editor for Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Hello there. And what are we starting with? Joni Mitchell.
We are. Joni Mitchell and her lifelong septuagenarian Canadian friend, Neil Young, has removed their music from Spotify. Purely because the Spotify, of course, is the online music streaming service and podcast service. Both Joni Mitchell and Neil Young believe that they shouldn't be spouting anti-vax messages on their platform. And we must reiterate that it's not Spotify itself. It's a man called Joe Rogan. Now, I'm out with demographic, not only of podcasts, but who Joe Rogan actually is.
Yeah, I've never heard of him.
But my son, and Tom has heard of him, my son's also called Tom.
Gosh.
And
it's because you're very young, Tom. Apparently.
He's got a cult following in terms of his podcasts. And he's predominantly, a conspiracy theorist, we would say. And he's, he's extolling the virtues of choice and freedom of speech. And I think this is definite clarity from the Swedish company Spotify. They took 0.3 of a second to reply to Neil Young's request to, take Joe Rogan off or keep Neil Young. They were like, well, thanks very much, love, but on you go, see you later. But as someone else has said, to quote Joni Mitchell, you don't know what you've had till it's gone or something like that.
Yeah, she did
So
say
we
that.
don't know, there's movements here, but also it's worth highlighting that both Joni Mitchell and Neil Young had polio when they were younger. So they
believe in vaccines.
They very much believe in vaccines.
But this Joe Rogan guy, I mean, am I right that Spotify signed him up for a fortune because they value his podcast.
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest podcasts in the world, as far as I understand it. So he's a stand-up comedian, fundamentally. He also, I think, does commentary on UFC fighting in the US or something like this. So he's got this huge cult following, and he just invites on people from all different kind of perspectives. Some of them sometimes conspiracy serious, sometimes just commentators and all the rest of it. So it's this kind of huge sort of platform. And I think really at the end of the day, he's not necessarily an anti-vaxxer.
No.
I think he's someone who just probably a little bit vaccine hesitant and has had on some slightly more crankish voices. But I just don't think you should be calling on a company to silence people you disagree with, even if it is a very
He's the one who was interviewing Elon Musk when Elon Musk was smoking a dodgy cigarette.
Is that right? Oh, I see.
Yeah, he is. I recognise him because I see clips of him pop up on YouTube. He's one of those that the suggestions comes up with him all the
But
time.
I just wonder if it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because really the fundamental demographic of people who would follow Neil Young, I wouldn't have thought they were Spotify.
Would be the same people.
No.
They would have them, with vinyls or a CD, and...
Well, that's why Spotify doesn't care about this protest, isn't it, as much as anything else, because the revenue they would be getting is just negligible.
Yeah. From either of those artists,
Yeah.
However, I think Joni Mitchell's wonderful. That's just what I'm going to say. I'm a fan anyway, so there you go.
Well, there you go. Tom, in The Sun on Sunday, looking at Boris Johnson and what he may be doing with British troops.
Yes, so, I mean, as you've been talking about all morning, this build-up of British troops in Eastern Europe, doubling the deployment there in places like Estonia, anti-tank weaponry being taken down. Just a lot of sabre rattling, to be honest with you, saying that we've got to face down Russian threats. And it just strikes me that a lot of this is an attempt to kind of distract from a lot of his domestic woes. These are small numbers in the grand scheme of things, but the problem is it still can spark further conflicts, because if the more and more you're calling Russia's bluff, the more and more they might want to respond. And given the fact that Russia's primary concern is keeping Ukraine sort of neutral, they don't. What they've often said is we don't want NATO encroaching. Exactly. Is this going to cause tensions to simmer down? Boris says that he wants peace to prevail. Liz Truss and Ben Wallace are being deployed to Moscow to meet their opposite numbers. But this kind of action, I think, is certainly not going to allow for a situation in which those kind of more calm discussions could take place.
Yeah, it just feels so Cold War-y that if somebody on either side says something wrong, we could be in a worse situation than either side ever wanted it to go.
I think that's always the danger, and I just think there's also a lot of people, especially like British foreign policy, who just can't get their mind out of that kind of Cold War mindset. Russia is not the threat to us it once was. I just don't understand why just any time there's an opportunity to kind of shake the fist at the Eastern power, they always take it, even when it's dangerous.
The reality is this has been going on. Putin has played cat and mouse now for months. I covered this story back in August/July here, doing the paper reviews, and no one. This is trademark, absolute down the line Putin. He behaves like this all the time. It's like 10 steps forward. Who's watching? Who's actually giving me, affirmation? Who's telling me, they're frightened of me? It's a control thing.
But then there's the whole Crimea issue. I mean, when was Crimea? 2014?
Yep. Well, that was the land grab. And I think this is exactly what he's trying to do with the Ukraine. Because he was implementing the time when Belarus and the Polish division, Putin was then sending over submarines and tanks to the Ukraine. We've now gone into Estonia, which is just above Ukraine, and to the left of Russia. I mean, again, I think, as Tom said, I think this is a brilliant blinding from Boris to completely deflect from what's going on at the moment in number 10 and number 11, and I think he has to deal with it.
But is he not focusing on what the military advisors are telling him? I mean, we spoke to a former general, just a short time ago, and he was saying, well, this sort of move is the sort of thing that could make Putin at least stop and think.
Well, there's been a lot coming out of the kind of military advice and the Foreign Office, which, to be honest, just hasn't stood up to scrutiny. I mean, you had former Ukrainian officials pour cold water over this claim that Russia's about to impose this kind of government in Kiev and all the rest of it. There just seems to be a bit too much of a drumbeats war on this side, I think. And if you read the kind of reports, not just from Russia, but from Ukraine, there's not that same level of imminent threat being discussed. I think this means a lot more to certain Western countries, particularly Boris at this point. But the problem is, the more you raise the temperature, the more things might happen.
The other problem is, of course, that Boris's aides haven't really been haven't been up to scrutiny, really, have they? And, can we trust them?
Well, they've all
trust them?
watching the cricket.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
Having sing-along ABBA parties or something, I don't know.
Let's talk. You haven't got your smartwatch on today.
No.
You normally do.
This has just made me think about that. I've got one of these new smartwatches, which really annoys me because it keeps telling me to stand up.
Yes.
There's a fitness thing on it that tells me it's time to stand up. And I think, hang on a minute. And then a bit later on, it congratulates me for standing up for a minute or something.
You deactivate that, surely.
Well, I'm going to have to find a way. But apparently there's a calorie counting watch now.
I think you've already found it, and you've taken it off.
I've taken it off there. Freedom for you.
So, look, this is something that, we've got an issue here with childhood obesity in this country. We've got, the kids aren't moving enough, they're not eating the right things. We've now got this squeeze in the economy for produce and everything. So there is a definite harm here that can be forced on children. But this thing, I don't know if this is the answer. This is a calorie watch for kids aimed at 6 and above. Right? And it's going to be tracking... I don't think they can count properly at that age anyway. So they're going to be counting their calories. They're going to be obsessed by it. This is a demographic that's been locked down, that's not been able to go to school, that's not been able to form proper social friendships with people because of lockdown.
But at that age, that's a parent's responsibility.
I agree.
To make sure that a child is eating healthily and doing a bit of exercise and all the rest of it.
Could the watch help the parents? Could it be a parental aid? I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. I think that's all negative.
I think it's got very negative connotations. And I think to put this on a child would be actually like marking them out. Almost, why...
Also, you can see some youngsters, I think particularly girls, but actually it does affect boys as well, getting obsessed with how many calories they're eating. And their problems are bad enough at the moment, aren't they?
Absolutely.
Because counteracting to the obesity problem, you've got youngsters who are completely obsessed with keeping skinny.
Well, surely we should be moving them away from screens in any event.
Yes, we should.
I mean, the reading age of a kid starting secondary school is 11. At age 16, the reading age in some schools is 11.
Yeah, well, that's not to do with screens, is it? Because we all read stuff on our screens.
They're not reading. They're on social media. They're not reading books.
And they're not spelling properly. They're spelling social media as well.
And they're speaking social media.
How shocking.
How shocking. Let's go, Jim.
But isn't there a problem? I don't know what you make of it, Tommy. You're the youngest one on the breakfast bar this morning.
It's all your fault.
Do we get a bit obsessed when we get a little bit older, all three of us, and just think, oh, actually, it's not right. What the young are doing isn't right. It can't be correct.
There's always a bit of an element of that. I think it's always tempting with social media or anything else to indulge a sort of sense of moral panic. But I completely agree with Claire on this calorie counting thing. I mean, teach kids, give them some information, don't give them a complex about these things. I think that's probably a fair way to...
Tell us about the frat house culture in number 10, because this is actually quite alarming, isn't it?
It is. So it's a slightly silly headline, but quite a serious story. So this is one of Dominic Cummings' basically latest allegations that he's levelled at number 10, which is that Boris Johnson couldn't be trusted to take his top secret strap level, as they're called in the lingo, briefings up to the Downing Street flat because of the fact that on occasion they would go up there, friends of the Prime Minister and his wife would be hanging out these top secret documents, would just be kind of lying on the side. At the weekend, his red box would just be allegedly left outside of the flat window. So it's very difficult, or the door I should say, not hanging out of the window, that would be even worse. But there's a difficulty here because there is this big briefing war going on. We know that Dominic Cummings left with that kind of box full of secrets that he wanted to deploy. So much of the scandals of recent months, you can see his fingerprints all over it. But at the same time, it's adding to that picture, isn't it, of a number 10.
But apparently ministers, when they get a red box, they're told it has to be just for you, your eyes only, and you keep it locked no matter where you are, even in your own home.
Exactly.
And allegedly, according to this, Boris just took it upstairs and was looking through it and left things all over the coffee table.
I'd love that. Wouldn't you love to go around someone's house and know that there's secret documents around?
Yeah, wouldn't you, Josh?
They pop off to the kitchen. Would you like
That's your journalistic integrity there,
I'd love that. I'd love to have a good nosy round.
That's your journalistic integrity there, isn't it?
Being a nosy partner.
Yes.
That's what it takes.
Can't deny it. To be honest.
Look, on a serious note, civil servants for years, there was one, I can't remember the chap's name, but he left them at a bus stop.
Yes.
Train station.
Yes.
There's one of these scandals every few years.
Yeah, they're never fully scrutinised, and then civil servants, I think, are running it. And BBC4 have just started re-showing Yes Prime Minister. And my goodness me.
It's all true.
It's all true.
It's astonishing if you watch the old episodes because they are almost accurate to what's happening at the moment.
Sir
Absolutely
Humphrey,
incredible.
et al.
Yeah, absolutely love it. Look, Clem Muldoon, Tom Slater, there we must leave it for now.
Thank you very much.
But we will see you a little bit later on.
It's 7:47. Today marks the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday. It was an event that saw 13 people shot dead and at least 15 others injured after members of the Army's Parachute Regiment opened fire on civil rights demonstrators in the Bogside, a predominantly Catholic part of Londonderry.
Well, let's talk now to Colin Breen, former police officer in Northern Ireland and author of A Force Like No Other. Good to see you this morning. Look, 50 years on, is this still as much of an open wound as it was?
It's perhaps slightly closed. It always had been a running sore in Northern Ireland, and the circumstances that came about that day and the build-up to it. And certainly, obviously, in the city of Londonderry itself, it never got closed. David Cameron went some way to it after the Savile report, when he said, no doubt, what happened was wrong, unjustified and unjustifiable. And it certainly appeased or settled people to hear words like that coming from someone in his position. And but the circumstances when the march being made illegal, it was sort of becoming a perfect storm on the day. And the murder of two police officers, David Montgomery and Peter Gilgan, a 20-year-old and a 26-year-old, just 3 days before it, perhaps didn't, let's say, it didn't help with the tension going out with the number of people who were on the streets and everything coming together in the now disaster that we know occurred, and in some ways was a catalyst to the next 30-odd years of violence and troubles that we ended up with.
I mean, it's 50 years ago, but obviously the families of those who were killed or injured still want justice, and they see justice as a prosecution. That'll never happen, will it now?
I can't say that there will be prosecutions. I'd be very surprised if, whenever the Savile inquiry was called for, it was simply, and indeed the family said they just wanted to find out for sure what happened and acknowledge that what happened was wrong, which obviously couldn't be any more unequivocal than what David Cameron said. And then there's actually a slight split between them, that some want to pursue prosecutions. Whether they're going to see 70-odd-year-old men going to court 50 years later, I would very much doubt if the evidence would do it. And then bearing in mind, of course, Northern Ireland, nothing's ever simple. When you consider that Tony Blair gave letters of comfort to terrorists that they wouldn't be prosecuted, I could see how there would be a furore then if members of the army were going to be prosecuted 50 years later.
Well, as we said, yes, it's 50 years. It is a long time, and presumably time doesn't heal. As you said, things are very complicated in Northern Ireland.
No, it is, and it keeps, it's almost generational, that the thing, until closure would have occurred, and I think it did go some way, to be fair to David Cameron, after the Savile report, it helped sort of settle things down somewhat, but it has been a running sore for years, and as I say, perhaps tragically what occurred afterwards, whenever that became a catalyst, because the civil rights movement initially started off with their quite justifiable desires about housing and all things like that, but the provisional IRA eventually sort of hijacked the movement, and as a result, whenever this tragedy occurred, it was a recruiting agent for them, and sadly we've all paid the price for the next 30, 40 years of violence and mayhem on the streets.
Indeed. Thank you very much indeed, Colin. That's Colin Breen there, who was a police officer in Northern Ireland and author of a book called A Force Like No Other.
OK, let's change tack for you this Sunday morning and have a look at all the biggest entertainment stories from across the UK. And joining us, as always, is Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning.
Good morning,
every day.
Stephen and Anne.
different bit of glamour every day.
I can't help myself.
I'm loving
My bank account is not happy, though. No. It really isn't happy. January was supposed to be saving, and said I've been splashing out on sale stuff.
Yeah, but it looks good. It looks good. Look, let's talk Adele in The Sun on Sunday, because she's pulled out something else.
Yeah, I feel like it's been Adele overload, so I'm sorry to the viewers. It's the story that keeps on giving. So The Sun on Sunday is reporting that Adele has pulled out of her forthcoming appearance at the Brit Awards, where she was due to be performing at London's O2 Arena on the 8th of February. It was set to be a big night for her, actually, because she's up for 4 awards, including Best Album of the Year, and we know her album 30 has done incredible. So she's going to be missing out on this big opportunity. The Sun's reporting that it's mostly because of her team are saying she could face a backlash because she's just pulled out of the Las Vegas residency, and then for her to come and appear at the Brits, it's going to cause more fuel to the fire as it is. But again, this again is just going to keep this story going.
Yeah, for now, I just wonder if she is just better to sort of lay low for 6 months and...
I think a lot of her fans are worried about her.
Yeah, it would be, because it's a lot of pressure, and, you know, the papers are keeping digging in on actually what's happened. So it's gone from her having an argument with her set designer to now saying it's actually trouble in paradise with her new relationship with her boyfriend, Rich Paul. So obviously the papers are going to keep on digging. So that must be a lot of pressure. But the only thing with Adele, she's one of those artists where we don't get her all the time. Now she's released 30. We might have another 10 years until she comes out with a new album, especially with everything that's going. And with Adele, I know she likes to strike when it's hot. So this is a massive blow to all the promotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, tell me about TIG. Oh, I'm not familiar with TIG.
It's the TIG.
The TIG.
Yeah.
The TIG. Oh.
So before...
Yeah, it's the TIG. Good news. I don't know any more than that. It's just called the TIG.
So before the Duchess of Sussex got married to Prince Harry, she had a booming lifestyle blog called The TIG, where she was putting everything on there, from her favourite recipes, her holidays, her thoughts on feminism. But as soon as she entered the royal family, she shut it down. And eagle-eyed viewers have realised that she's actually gone to apply to get it reinstated. So it started rumour-villes that she could be relaunching her blog again. And we know the Duchess, she's quite excited in airing her views, and she's quite interested in lifestyle avenues, and she's always said this has been a passion project for her. So I won't be surprised if this year we will be getting Meghan back in the blogosphere.
Yeah. It's clearly something she feels she had to give up when she joined the royal family.
Definitely.
And now she's not royal anymore. She can get it going again.
Yeah.
Does the TIG mean anything?
Well, it's based off her favourite wine. It's Tigiano, and it's an Italian wine, so she named it...
Oh, darling!
Wow.
How fancy.
One never did.
Why didn't I know that?
That's why I should start my own blog. But I'm going to call it Blue Nun.
Hello. How saucy. Oh, not saucy.
No, that's not saucy. No. Can we have a quick look at what we like to call Queen Imelda?
Yes, so The Crown is coming back for season 5 in November, and Imelda Staunton's going to be playing the Queen, and they've been releasing images. They've been teasing us Crown fans, and she looks identical to the Queen. So I know at the moment relations aren't good with Russia at the moment, but we've seen the Queen, well, Imelda playing the Queen, going to Moscow on her first and only visit in 1994, and she looks strikingly like Our Majesty.
Yes, it's in the papers.
I look forward to seeing that. They shot it in East London, did they?
Yeah, they
Which apparently is very Soviet.
They shot it in Camberwell, South London, so they said the buildings are quite grim.
Sorry,
it's not
very good
any of the
advert for
viewers
that,
live in Camberwell, but yeah, Camberwell's the new Moscow for the Crown.
Oh, there you go.
They didn't go far, did they?
No.
I thought it was meant to be a glamorous business shooting the Crown.
Yeah,
there you go.
Anyway. Stephanie, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later.
Speak to you guys later.
A different outfit next time.
Yeah, I think I'm going to come in with something orange next time.
Perfect.
OK, we need warning. Still to come in the next hour, more on how the national insurance rise could affect all of us, you. But first of all, the weather.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudy. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The winds are set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Morning to you, it's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And we're live on both your TV and your radio. You can't get away from us, we're online too. So wherever you are, take us with you. Coming up this morning...
The Sunday Times reports the Chancellor Rishi Sunak has won the tug of war over a hike in national insurance. In a joint article with the Prime Minister, he insisted they are still tax-cutting Conservatives.
But as the Prime Minister considers doubling the number of troops it has in Eastern Europe amid escalating tensions over Ukraine, we'll be hearing from Ukrainians living here in the UK about how they feel it's affecting them.
Many Ukrainians are worried, apprehensive, because they know that any time Putin could say yes and troops across the board, as they did in 2014.
And today marks the anniversary of the day that Britain bid farewell to one of its greatest ever leaders, Sir Winston Churchill. The former Prime Minister's funeral took place 57 years ago today.
And to mark that anniversary, we're going to be joined a bit later in the programme by Winston Churchill. Well, a lookalike. Here he is, and he certainly does look like him.
Can't wait to meet him, just to see what that experience is like.
Yeah.
If he's in character.
Oh, I'm sure he will be. Yeah.
Fabulous. Don't forget, anything you want to talk about, just drop us a line, gbviews@gbnews.uk. Cats. Start off with cats again, because there's so many pictures coming through this after PETA, the animal rights group, said that cats shouldn't have cat flaps. They shouldn't really be allowed out because it's not good for them. And it's not good for birds and mice.
The 2.5 million birds or something that they kill every year. But also the cats themselves, apparently, something like 200,000, something like that. I can't remember the exact figure, but a heck of a lot of cats get killed on our roads every year.
And it is a worry. If you're a cat owner, it's a worry if they go out. But then that's what they do. It's a natural thing for cats to want to go out and hunt and investigate. And
if you live near a busy road, though, wouldn't you think twice about having a cat?
Well, that's what you should do.
We've also had some wonderful names of cats in today. Who have we had? Boris would be a good name for a cat, actually, wouldn't it?
We'll probably get a Boris.
Yeah.
We've had a
Nero, Columbo. Columbo's a brilliant one. This is Gizmo, who went for a quick hunt during the programme, apparently. Oh, my goodness, look at him.
Look at that.
Him go.
Cat enjoying themselves. What's wrong with that? Let's look at Barney, who's taking a approach.
He's just a pair of eyes and a fluff ball, isn't he?
Oh, he's gorgeous.
Oh, he's lovely.
Absolutely gorgeous. It's so lovely to see the pictures of your little furry friends.
Yeah, thank you. Keep them coming in. GBviews at gbnews.uk. We'd love to see pictures of, as you say, your little fluffy friends, whether you keep them indoors or outdoors. And actually, love to hear what you think of that idea of keeping a cat indoors as an indoor pet.
I just don't think it's right.
It doesn't feel right, but, you know, apparently a lot of people do it.
Now, to our main news this morning, and Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak have agreed to commit to April's national insurance increase. Now, that's despite the Prime Minister's weakening popularity.
Yeah, the Chancellor said the £12 billion a year tax rise was the right plan to fix the health and social care system, which has been heavily strained, of course, and damaged by COVID.
Well, let's talk to Peter Dowd, MP for Bootle and former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, or Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, I believe, Peter. I mean, is this a necessary move, a necessary evil, if you like, to start to, invest further and balance the books?
Look, at the end of the day, the country's in a bit of a mess in terms of the economy, both pre-COVID and during COVID and post-COVID. So decisions are going to have to be made to sort of stabilise basically the country's finances. And there's a moot point as to how you do that. The government had decided to come up with this particular option. And I think that option is going to be a real challenge to millions of people who are going to have a hike. This is a 1.25% increase, but that's only that is a massive amount of money for people to find who are already on low wages.
So what is the answer then? As you said, the money's got to come from somewhere, and it's got to be sustainable. Talking £12 billion a year, that has to continue year on year. So where does it come from?
Well, look, I mean, I don't speak for the Labour Party on this one, but I think the view that I have is that you start with people who are in a better position to afford to pay higher taxes, like me as a Member of Parliament. People who are earning over £80,000 a year and in a better position to pay a higher rate of tax than me. You could also go to corporation tax. We're still one of the lowest corporation taxes in the Western world of the G7. That's an area that you should look at. There should be a look at maybe tax reliefs. There are about £450 billion worth of tax reliefs every year. That's an area that you should look at as well. There's also an issue about many corporations are not paying the full amount of tax, whether you want to call them avoiding it or evading it. Avoiding it is legal, evading it is illegal. The avoidance of tax is another area that we should be looking at. So there are a fair amount of areas in relation to the tax regime, if you want, that you could look to before you look to this if you want, this rather blunt instrument, which is a 1.5% increase in the national insurance rate.
But if it were easy enough to find the money in those ways that you've just suggested, why hasn't the Prime Minister and the Chancellor chosen that? They need popularity at the moment, and this appears to be a very unpopular decision.
Well, interestingly enough, I mean, it really is an interesting question, that, Anne, because I would have thought they would have had the sense to have gone down a path which is going to be seen as more equitable, but clearly they haven't. I think this is partly to do with, if you want, their ideology, their view about taxes. They take the general view that people should be paying lower taxes, that we should have a low tax economy. The problem with a low tax economy, in a sense, is that you have a low investment economy. So we're not. This is a question of trying to invest in the economy. So for every sort of pound you invest in the economy, you get massive returns. You might get 4 or 5 times return on every pound that you invest. So it's about their attitude to tax and to investment, and I'm afraid it's old-fashioned and well out of date for a modern world, and it's certainly out of date for Britain at the moment, who've been suffering from 10 years of austerity. And where has it got us? Basically, one of not the lowest rate in the G7 of growth overall.
Look, Peter, what would you say to Brian, who's emailed gbviews@gbnews.uk and said the NHS doesn't need any more funding? All they need to do is get rid of the internal market, which is costing them billions.
Well, it isn't quite as simple as that. There are never ever simple ways to deal with these matters. What you've got to do is you've got to take a comprehensive look at the way, say, the NHS is funded, what it does. But the reality is, getting rid of the internal market may be one of the things that you can do, but it's not going to resolve. It's not going to resolve the problem. If only it resolved the problem, you could do it, but it's not quite as simple as that, I'm afraid.
Tony, one of our viewers, says, stop complaining about it. There is a limit to what the government can do. They don't control gas prices, but they do control the green levy. They don't control petrol prices, but they do control the duty. Is there a clue there?
Well, look, the government are part of a jigsaw that is the British economy. They're a big player in that, and they can use levers or levers in different areas to initiate and to initiate an investment for the sake of argument, to encourage, to cajole as necessary. It is a complex system. It's an economy of £2.2 trillion a year. It's a huge economy, the 5th or 6th largest economy in the world. And it's the duty of the government to make sure that economy works for everyone. And it can use all sorts of different measures to encourage people, for example, to invest. It can encourage people to get to work. At the moment, the government are going down the path, for example, of saying, oh, well, if you don't get a job within whatever it is a month, your benefits are under threat. There are parts of the country where there just aren't jobs there. Overall, there may be a surplus of jobs, but in certain areas, like in my constituency, the unemployment rate is 6 or 7%. It's just the jobs aren't there. And it's no good pointing the finger at people to tell them to get a job if there actually jobs are not available.
Yep.
People are worried, certainly.
They are. Peter, I nearly called you Peter Bootle then. Peter Dowd in Bootle.
Yes,
Good
thank
to
you
talk
very
to
much.
I
Good
love,
to talk.
I love Bootle. We've had a message from Christine. Morning, Christine. Hello, Stephen and Anne. What we like about GB News is that it makes us feel like part of a conversation and is so refreshing. Thank you.
Well, it is an ongoing conversation.
It is.
And we're asking questions sometimes that there doesn't seem to be an answer to.
Yeah.
Like this. I mean, Liz says, the problem with social care is that everybody wants it sorted, but nobody wants to pay. And then we've got another one from Jamie who says, remember all those opinion polls when a significant majority said they supported a tax rise to help the NHS and social security? Perhaps instead of moaning, just suck it up.
Yeah. Well, it's the trouble. The grass is always greener to an extent. But then the minute you try to reform the NHS, as Brian was talking about, and getting rid of the internal market, there's lots of people I've spoken to over the years from the health, senior people in the health service say it does need reform.
Yes.
The minute you try to do it, it's politically
too
toxic.
delicate. Yeah, you just can't. You don't want to be seen to be the Prime Minister or the government who mucks around with the NHS because it's just sort of something you just can't touch.
But this is a conversation, so keep your thoughts coming through. gbviews@gbnews.uk, tweet us @gbnews. And we honestly love to hear from you and love to get your perspective. And then when we can, put your questions to the people we're talking
And you remember how I was saying, you know, we're on the TV and the radio and you can't get away from us.
Yeah.
You can't even in Qatar. Ren says, I live in Qatar and we get GB News via YouTube. Thank heavens for some balanced, honest news, finally. I have 12 rescue cats indoors and 3 to 5 strays in my garage. Plus there are a few more who come through the compound that I feed.
Yeah. And neuter.
Yeah.
Thankfully. I mean, you're doing
Not yourself, I hope.
a lot of good work.
Yeah.
A lot of good work.
But isn't that lovely, watching us in Qatar?
Can you get on your own bed? Or do you have to sleep on a cat bed
Send
on the floor?
us a picture, we want to see.
12, that's a lot. OK, let's bring you up to date with the headlines for you this morning. And the Prime Minister is looking at doubling the number of troops deployed to strengthen Europe's borders in the face of rising Russian aggression. Boris Johnson said it would send a clear message to the Kremlin that we will not tolerate their destabilising activity.
Meanwhile, Boris Johnson has committed to the national insurance increase that we've been talking about, set to go ahead in April. The Prime Minister has been under pressure from some of his party to scrap or at least delay the measure in the midst of the cost of living crisis. It's a 1.25% rise and it's designed to tackle COVID-induced NHS backlogs and reform social care.
The government says Wolverhampton and Sheffield will be the first of 20 disadvantaged areas to gain access to a £1.5 billion fund. As part of levelling up plans, the money will be used to develop new neighbourhoods on brownfield sites.
And a second storm is set to hit the northern half of the UK. Storm Corrie is expected to bring winds of up to 90 miles an hour. Meanwhile, thousands of homes in northeast England are still without power after Storm Malik battered the country. Many people say it's like living in the dark ages. A 60-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy have been killed by the storm.
The COVID vaccine rollout has been extended to about 50,000 children aged 5 to 11. Now, children who are most at risk of COVID or are living with someone who's vulnerable will be offered the jab. They'll be given 2 Pfizer vaccines 8 weeks apart, but the dose is just a third of the amount used in adults.
And on the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the former leader of the Labour Party says it's an outrage that no one has been convicted for the murders. Jeremy Corbyn has also condemned government plans to ban prosecutions for killings in the Troubles. Boris Johnson has tweeted to say we must learn from the past, reconcile and build a peaceful future for people in Northern Ireland.
Well, when it comes to the cost of living, things are not looking good for 2022. Ministers are being urged, as you know, to cut VAT on energy bills to ease the skyrocketing cost of living crisis, which is already squeezing Britain's poorest households.
Some businesses have warned this rise will not be short-lived either, after British Gas boss Chris O'Shea warned customers that high gas prices will be here for the next 18 months to 2 years.
Well, let's talk to Chris Huhne, former Secretary of State for Energy and Climate Change. It's good to see you this morning. Thanks for joining us. Look, I mean, what, if anything, can be done here?
Well, one of the things that has to be done, and I hope that the government is going to do this, will be to ensure that those who are most vulnerable are protected with special help through the Warm Homes discount. That's the most important thing. But more broadly, what the government cannot do is protect us against big changes in world prices for commodities that we use every day. And if it tries to do that, it will probably end up making the whole situation worse in the long run and at a substantial cost to the public finances. So yeah, I mean, it is just it is a reality.
Forgive me for jumping
in, we have
Chris,
had a 30% rise in oil prices just since the beginning of December, and at the same time, gas prices.
Newspapers yesterday. Forgive me. It was in the newspapers yesterday that some of these energy companies are making up to £900 per second. So, I mean, the basic prices might be going up, but why do? It doesn't necessarily mean that our prices need to go up as dramatically, does it?
Well, there may well be room, and there is precedent for windfall taxes, which will be part of the way in which the Treasury can afford to pay extra warm homes discounts and protect the most vulnerable. But the fundamental point is that energy, particularly fossil fuel energy, is highly capital intensive. It requires vast amounts of money. So saying, that they're making so much money per second is neither here nor there. The question is, how much money they're making per pound of investment, and the investment has been very much lower over the last few years. And that's one of the reasons why prices have been so much higher.
There's no suggestion, though, is that there doesn't seem to be any hint at all that the government is considering a windfall tax on any of these companies, though?
Well, I can understand that, because a windfall tax is, if companies think that it could be imposed at any point in the future, is something which will undermine investment intentions, without any doubt. You can get away with it without having a bad effect on investment if people who are going to invest think that you're not going to do it again. But of course, British governments have done this in the past. They might do it again, and therefore, if you're an investor thinking of trying to put more money into production of oil and gas, for example, not only are you worried about the fact that your industry is in long-term decline because of the need to control carbon emissions, but you also are thinking, well, hang on a minute, is the government going to turn around and take away my future profits from this investment with a windfall tax? So the Treasury will be reluctant to go down the road of a windfall tax, but in extremis, that is available to them.
What would you say to David, who's got in touch this morning and said there's a simple solution? Well, I mean, nothing's simple, but you see what he means. He said suspend the 25% levy that's added to all bills for 1 year until the market's stabilised. I mean, that's the green levy, and it is substantial.
Yep, the green levy is, and that is always the argument. Whenever energy prices go up, the argument is, let's suspend the green levy. And I can remember that when I was Energy and Climate Change Secretary, because that was exactly the argument then, when energy prices were a lot lower than they are now. That was exactly the argument for not doing the levy to insulate our homes, doing the Green Deal. And as a result of that short-termism of saying, OK, the Treasury said, we're not going to fund this, it's got to be done in the marketplace. The reality is that today we have much leakier, much less efficient homes than we should have had. If we'd had 10 years of working hard at making our extremely ancient, old, often pre-First World War housing stock much more energy efficient, we could have cut people's bills and protected people much more effectively against these rises in world oil and gas prices. So it is always open to any British government to go short-term, easy solution. But in the long run, that's the wrong thing to do. And we're paying now for the fact that we took those short-term, easy decisions back in the day when we actually had the opportunity to go ahead and try and cut our energy use dramatically with a scheme which would have helped right the way across the country to improve our housing stock and reduce. We're actually using more energy, believe it or not, than they do, for example, in Sweden, which has far colder winters, because the Swedes have been sensible enough historically to be much better about insulating their homes. We haven't, and we're paying the price.
Nevertheless, the short term is the only thing that's of interest to people at the moment who can't afford, or worried they can't afford to pay their bills, and are worried that they literally worried about turning on the heating in their homes and facing that dilemma between do I eat or do I heat? And surely it's a government's job to look after those citizens, even if it is a short-term measure.
I entirely agree. I entirely agree that the key first thing that needs to be done is to ensure through the Warm Homes discount that you are reaching the most vulnerable people and ensuring that they can actually get through the winter without having to make that really hard choice between eating and heating, because we don't want to put anybody, and we're a rich enough, developed enough society that it would be frankly immoral for us to put anybody in that situation. But that is targeted support. That's targeted support on those people who are most vulnerable. And I entirely agree with that. Where I'm much more reluctant is to go ahead and say, well, let's suspend VAT, let's take off the green levies for everybody. Because frankly, yes, that would benefit people like me and a lot of other people who are not in that situation where we have to choose between eating and heating. But in the long run, there will be a cost. It'll be a cost for me too. Because frankly, if we don't have an insulation scheme to really get our housing stock looking better over time, what's going to happen is we will have higher oil and gas use. That's going to be very costly. I fear, for example, that we're going to be seeing through this year a considerable increase in oil prices. We've already seen oil prices up 30% since the beginning of December. That's going to hit anybody using heating oil in rural areas who aren't on the gas grid. It's also, of course, going to hit everybody who uses petrol or diesel for getting around. So, you know, the cost of living squeeze is going to be substantial, and there's no point in trying to disguise that. This is a major international cost of living squeeze resulting from the big cycle in oil and gas prices, and indeed other commodity prices as well, as a result of the underinvestment over recent years.
To change tack, Chris, can I ask you what you make of it as an observer from the outside looking in now onto what is going on in Parliament, and particularly Number 10 and all the pressure that there is on the Prime Minister? I mean, you resigned from your position, a bit of resistance, but in the end you came to the decision that you had to go because of the scandal that you were wrapped up in at the time. How difficult is it for the Prime Minister, do you think, when you see this pressure mounting up? How difficult is it to keep resisting that and then ultimately to say, do you know what, I've got to go?
To be honest, I don't think that there's any parallel. I wouldn't seek to draw a parallel because I actually, as you rightly pointed out, I resigned the very day that charges were brought against me. And I had already resigned from the government when I was put under investigation. So if Boris Johnson had done the same as me, he would already have resigned. And the astonishing thing about Boris Johnson, frankly, is that he has completely rewritten the ministerial rulebook about respect for the ministerial code. And he has persisted in a way which breaks not only all of the rules, as far as I can see, on the ministerial code, but it also breaks the rules, the unwritten rule in British politics, which is that if you're in the headlines for this sort of thing for more than a week, you know, you're a real problem. And most prime ministers will ask a cabinet minister who's in this sort of situation for more than a week to resign. And yet here we have a prime minister who's been just going at it for months. And every week there's another story, which in itself would have been enough to decapitate most people in the past. So it is quite astonishing. And I personally would say it's very obvious that he's going to be out by the end of the year. But I mean, the astonishing thing is that he's lasted as long as he has.
Chris Huhne, it's good to talk to you this morning. Thank you.
Fascinating. Thank you very much indeed. Coming up, we're going to be looking at how the crisis in Ukraine is affecting Ukrainians living here in Britain with our London reporter Alice Porter. First of all, though, the weather.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Good morning again. It's 8:28. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. And we're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio. And you can even get us in Qatar on YouTube.
Oh,
really
yes.
Good to know.
We've got to say hello to Amy Caddy this morning. Up and about, ready to support marathon man Gary McKee on day 30 of his 365 consecutive marathons up in Cumbria from Macmillan and Hospice at Home. Can we have a shout out? Yes, you can.
Yes, you can. You deserve one.
We'd love to have a presenter up here with us one day. We'll see what we should send one of our roving reporters up.
Yeah.
365 consecutive marathons.
How does anyone do that? That is absolutely
beyond
extraordinary.
Me. How you do one is beyond me.
But keep all your views coming in because we are GB Views at gbnews.uk. And Winston Churchill has just walked in. The newsroom at the back there. We're going to be meeting him because it's, did we say 57 years?
57 years.
57 years ago today was the funeral of Winston Churchill. And do you remember those amazing scenes? So I don't know if you don't remember. I don't remember. But you've seen the scenes where, you know, they brought his funeral cortege up the river and all the cranes and docklands bowed.
Yeah.
It was quite extraordinary. And apparently the Queen, who never... it was protocol that the Queen never goes to a commoner's funeral. She not only went to Winston Churchill's funeral, she was there waiting for the coffin to arrive and everything, which was a complete break with protocol. But, of course, she had a very long-standing relationship with Winston Churchill.
But it is, when you think of an impersonator, so, I mean, some are good, some are bad, but I've just poked my nose over the screens here. It is extraordinary because it's not just how he looks, it's the stance and the position and the... It really is. You really got it. What time is he on?
In about an hour, I think, yes. So stay tuned because, honestly, he's worth meeting.
You've got to see it. If you're listening on the radio...
We'll describe him. Well, actually, no,
you'll hear him.
Yes.
But you see if you can get on YouTube or get on the telly and have a look because it is going to be quite extraordinary.
Yeah, I think everybody out there is wanting a selfie with
him. They are, yeah.
Well, let's move on to something that actually is a very, very dismal and tragic story indeed, because there's news of another storm moving in on the back of Storm Malik. And now we know that Storm Malik killed a woman and a 9-year-old boy and has left thousands without electricity.
Yeah.
Of course, the problem has been uprooted trees falling down. That's what killed people.
Well, we've got Storm Corrie, which is on the way, expected to bring further high winds through Scotland and the northeast of England.
So let's try and find out what's going on. Here's legendary weatherman John Ketley. Hello there, John.
Morning, Anne.
So it seems that after Storm Malik has done its thing, there's another one coming too.
Yes, this is Storm Corrie. This is no soap opera, of course. But it is a very serious storm, I have to say. I think we talked about it briefly yesterday, that there's another one hard on the heels of Malik. And it's coming in later on today. So even this afternoon into Western Scotland, Northern Ireland, the winds will be strengthening considerably. And those winds will reach 60, 70, 80, even 90 miles an hour over the northern part of Scotland later on today, particularly through tonight and first thing tomorrow morning. So some really serious winds are coming in from the northwest. The centre of the storm, around about 6 o'clock this evening, will be on Stornoway on the Isle of Skye. So some very fierce winds all around that low-pressure system. Everywhere the winds will start to freshen. But just like yesterday, down in the south of the country, it'll just be a very blowy night and blowy start to the day tomorrow. But it's up in the north, really. It's Scotland, Northern Ireland, and into northern England, perhaps the north of Wales, across the North Midlands into North Lincolnshire, where you'll see the most fierce of the winds coming in later on today and through tonight, first thing tomorrow morning.
Got to say, John, when we spoke to you yesterday about Malik, you didn't seem overly concerned.
Well, I was concerned, obviously, but the point was that there was another one hard on its heels. So I didn't want to get too embroiled in the first storm, which was already happening. We had to look forward. You know, I am a forecaster as well as talking about what's already occurred. But yes, it was a serious storm. It was obviously a killer storm, if you want to call it that, a terrible situation. But if you compare it with some storms of the past, I mean, if you go back, 1990, we had the Burnsday storm on the 25th of January in 1990, and something like 30 or 40 people were killed because of that storm coming through in the middle of the day. Well, thankfully, it wasn't as bad as that. But, of course, it does show how the warning systems have improved over the last 30 years as well.
Yes, and as I said, that sadly the deaths that were caused were by falling trees, and the winds are obviously hard enough to be able to blow down trees. The north, where the weather map shows it hitting hardest, doesn't sort of show how it does seem to affect the whole country. I mean, I'm not even Midlands, I'm South Midlands, but it was windy all day yesterday, and the trees were really showing it.
Oh yes, it was a widespread storm situation yesterday, just like this one will be as well. But of course, you've got to put it into context. It is still winter time, and you do expect to get winter storms. It was, as you said yesterday, it was ever thus. We don't underplay them, especially around coast and over the hills, in the valleys, mountain valleys, and such places as that. It is very serious. The storm wind does increase considerably from where it would be if you were just on the lowlands of Berkshire or South Midlands generally. So it is a different sort of situation as you go further north once again. It is a big storm, there's no doubt about that. It's an intense storm, but it does rattle away very quickly. So as I say, it's going to be around about the Isle of Skye at 6 o'clock this evening, and by lunchtime tomorrow it'll be the other side of Copenhagen. So you can see it's not hanging around. It is a very intense storm which is rattling across the country and rattling into the North Sea. But the legacy is going to be a lot of storm damage. There will be problems with travelling, and there will be problems with debris everywhere. And at the coast in particular, a lot of high seas, storm surges going on around some of the coast in the north especially.
Well, as you said, that's why there are weather warnings, and I suppose we should all be warned. John, thanks very much indeed.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, we've been talking a lot about the situation in Ukraine, the possible military build-up, which we could see the UK doubling the numbers of our troops heading to both sort of Ukraine and Kiev, but also Estonia and Poland. And there's a big question then, why are we so concerned with what Russia is doing, and how is it affecting us here in the UK, particularly if you are a Ukrainian? Well, Alice Porter's out and about, and Alice, I mean, from the people you've talked to, I mean, how are Ukrainians feeling about the tensions building up in their country and the borders surrounding it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are a lot of concerns from Ukrainians living across Europe, but also here in the UK, because, of course, we've got talks with Vladimir Putin and Boris Johnson coming up in the next couple of days of hopes of de-escalating a situation that could have, if it gets worse, ramifications around the world. But it's important to stress, in the middle of this are ordinary Ukrainians living in Ukraine, but also here in the UK. I mean, there's tens of thousands of people who are living in the UK who have Ukrainian links and heritage. So I thought it'd be a good opportunity to come and speak with them. So I've come to the Association of Ukrainians of Great Britain. I've come to their London branch, and I'm here with Vlodko and Natalia. Thank you so much for joining me and welcoming me in. I thought it might be good just to sort of start off with, I think a lot of people may be watching or a little bit confused maybe about the situation and thinking, why are Russia behaving in this way? What are the sort of the cultural links between Ukraine and Russia? So would you mind, Vlodko, just kind of giving a little bit of history as to perhaps how we're in this situation?
Yeah, well, we start back from the beginning. We can start from 988 when Volodymyr the Great accepted Christianity, and that was the foundation of the Ukrainian state. Throughout the history, you know, because we are neighbours, links will always be close, cultural, etc., trading. But then, because Ukrainians have always felt we have separate identity, separate language, we then go back to, say, 1919, when Ukraine declared independence and the unity of both East and West Ukraine. It was short-lived, only 3 to 4 years, but then the Russians invaded because the Russian Revolution incorporated Ukraine into the Soviet Union. And then we go further on. As part of the Soviet Union, we can talk about repression, genocide. We go on to the Second World War, German invasion, Holocaust, part of the Soviet Union again disintegrated in 1991, where Ukraine declared independence and established a state.
Okay, so thank you for giving that explanation, because I think some people might be confused. I understand a lot of Ukrainians do speak Russian, and perhaps some people may incorrectly think that there must be a sort of a cultural link, and that's obviously something that Putin has said himself. I think quite recently we're sort of saying he sees Ukrainians and Russians as one, but what would you both say in regards to that?
Just quickly, I would say don't be confused. We have Russian-speaking Ukrainians. That is because of a policy of Russification and also colonialism. So the Russian language was enforced onto Ukrainian people, especially in the East, which found itself under Russian rule more longer than Western Ukraine.
Okay, so in terms of for both of you, I mean, I think a lot of people have been watching this conflict, and if they don't know the situation, have been perhaps surprised. But you were saying to me earlier that this sadly isn't something that's really surprised you, given the history.
It's not surprising, and I want to say a few words about the language. I was pioneer back in USSR, and I was forced to speak Russian. So obviously, we do have now people and children that can speak Russian, but there's nothing to do with Russia. We were forced. So it was not our choice, and obviously not, especially now, it's not our choice. We do have our own language, we have our own traditions, we've got our land, we've got our own country. Full stop. Just mind your business and invest time and your efforts in your people.
Well, look, thank you for speaking to me. We're going to be coming back here in about an hour's time, and we'll be talking a little bit more about how both of them are feeling with their family and friends who are in Ukraine at the moment, watching this crisis really evolving right on their borders.
Okay.
Thanks very much, Alice. I must say that brings it home to you, doesn't it? You talk about Ukraine and you think about the political situation, deploying troops, but it's a country over there, and it's only when you talk to real people whose lives and families are affected that it really does bring it home to you, doesn't it?
Yeah,
It's
a
very, very worrying time.
Very real situation. Look, do stay with us on Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. We've got the Sunday papers coming up in just a minute.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 8:42.
It is?
We're running a bit behind schedule.
Are we behind?
We'd
better get a move on then.
We're like
haven't
a train, and we're a bit slow on the tracks. Leaves on the line.
Well, you're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, but we're very lucky because we're going to have a look through the newspapers right now. I can't speak this morning, I don't know why. Claire Muldoon is with us, broadcaster and journalist, and editor for Spiked Online, Tom Slater. Hello. Right, we're going to start with you, Claire.
Uh-huh.
This is astonishing. The NHS is preparing to sever all gambling industry funding for its addiction clinics.
Now, what's even more astonishing is 54% of the UK population gamble weekly.
54%?
54%.
Does that include the lottery?
No, the lottery is 40%. OK,
Right.
so there's... But within these statistics, it's all online because it's so accessible now, right down your phone, and everybody is constantly on their phones. So they get bombarded. Advertisements, the algorithms are set because of the Google searches, etc., etc. So now it's so easy just to place a bet. And of course, they're betting on football, they're betting on dogs, they're betting on absolutely everything. But what the NHS have now said, and I didn't actually know this existed, the levy, there was a tax levy put on gambling, and it's actually going towards addiction clinics. Now, spot the irony. It's a bit like a tobacco firm coughing up, pun intended, literally and metaphorically, for a chest clinic in the NHS. Now, we have to think, well, why is that happening? Because the NHS funding clearly isn't enough. But we need to do this. This is a cry for help. People are struggling post-lockdown now, and gambling is on the rise. But it's endemic stroke pandemic for that. But it goes bigger than that. It's the social into the social stratosphere for that, in terms of the fallout, what happens to families with gambling addiction.
Not everyone who gambles has a problem, though.
No, that's right, and that's why they wouldn't be using the gambling clinics. But there are lots of them, and it's on the increase.
But how do we feel then that money from gambling goes towards the addiction clinics? You said it's hugely ironic. Is it morally right or not?
Well, this is why the NHS are now saying, well, look, we're not comfortable with the way the money is being transferred to the clinics. And the amount of money that they're getting can run clinics in Leeds, Manchester and London, it's been reported. The bottom line is they need the money from somewhere, and I think it should come from the gambling authorities themselves and the gambling companies. They're rich enough. Pauline Coates, £432 million in Bet365, the company, that's her income. Okay, she'll clearly be taxed on that. That will help the NHS ultimately. But I think this is something...
It's an uncomfortable relationship,
Very
isn't it?
uncomfortable relationship. And I don't know if you're aware of the OxyContin drug in America.
Yeah.
That the Sackers said wasn't addictive, and yet it was. And now they're actually funding the court cases of the Americans. Such a small, teasy, horrible, duplicitous world funding. And
Yes.
we just have to be very mindful and watchful of where the money
So
comes
clearly
from.
now the NHS is uncomfortable about that relationship. And
They've not severed it yet.
But they're going to
No,
be short.
but they're thinking of it.
Yeah.
They're going to end up being short of money. That's the trouble.
That's the trouble.
Talk about being uncomfortable, Tom. In The Observer this morning, it's talking about Tories just, really needing to draw a line under this mess.
Yeah, so there's been a kind of sense that the Sue Gray report getting delayed and the police investigation kind of giving Boris Johnson a stay of execution has given the Prime Minister a bit of breathing space. But there's actually a lot of Tories, not least his various... Pardon me, no, I can't speak this morning.
That's weird,
Sarah
isn't
must
it?
be going around. It's not left them in a particularly good position because of the fact that there was a sense of, even though things were coming to a point, at least we could draw a line under it. There would be a huge blow-up, obviously, a huge backlash to any kind of confidence vote, leadership election. People would think they're playing around and talking to themselves at a time of crisis. But at least it would draw a line under it. And I think what's also interesting about this, it just reminds us how, I think part of the reason Boris Johnson is still in place is there's no clear sense of who would be his successor yet. No. People are talking about Rishi Sunak, people are talking about Liz Truss. At the same time, are these people really going to get that coalition together as Boris Johnson did in such a unique fashion in 2020?
Yeah, that's interesting, because people have been talking about Rishi taking over for 18 months now, haven't they? So why is he not viewed as a clear front runner in this?
He's definitely up there. You're completely right. He's the bookies' favourite. He's one of the most popular politicians in the country, not least because during the whole COVID pandemic, he's not only the one doling out the money, but he also seemed to kind of step up to the occasion and all the rest of it. But at the same time, I think there's a lot of nervousness because that majority that Boris Johnson got, it was a very strange coalition, a lot of old Labour voters, Blue Collar voters, as well as the Shires. Can Rishi or anyone else in the long term recreate that? That's the big question.
Well, he was very popular when he was giving away money, but he's clawing it back now, isn't he?
Well,
how will that turn out in a few months? We don't know.
Claire, looking at the Mirror, concerns about police officers being recruited without face-to-face interviews.
Yes, absolutely appalling. The wake of Sarah Everard's murder, right, by Wayne Couzens. This stopped me in my tracks when I read it today. Police forces are recruiting officers online without face-to-face interviews, leaving safety campaigners horrified.
I can't believe that.
I can't believe it either. There's one reported officer saying he didn't have any face-to-face human contact until he was measured for his uniform.
Yeah.
That's not right.
If
Somehow,
anything now, we need more rigorous.
particularly, as you say, from...
Absolutely.
If it's only a legacy for Sarah Everard, that must change. We've got to know who we're recruiting into the police.
Wayne Couzens was at least the 15th serving or former officer to have killed a woman.
Really?
This is just... Now is the time for more rigorous checks, not fast-track online selection processes. I completely and utterly agree.
Yeah.
Which police force is recruiting without face-to-face interviews, do we know?
West Midlands, Wiltshire, Avon and Somerset and Hampshire forces are all using the system, which has been branded bonkers by Brendan O'Brien, Director of Police Recruitment firm Blue Light Consultancy.
Right.
Shocking.
It doesn't seem right, does it?
No, not at all.
Have we just time to squeeze in, Tom, a Mail on Sunday trigger warning?
Yes. So Oliver Twist has been given a trigger warning. So there's been a lot of these stories recently. Basically, a university, in this case Royal Holloway, putting this kind of almost like a parental advisory sticker on a great work of literature.
What, this novel might upset you?
Essentially, yes, because of its content of child abuse, domestic violence and racial prejudice. The university backed it up by saying that books can cause anxiety and distress, potentially because of past experience. And you think,
what is wrong with people?
This is a university.
This is a university. Unless these students, it talks about, it's stirring up feelings of past experience, but unless these students, experience Victorian squalor, I don't necessarily see.
But that's why Oliver Twist was written.
Precisely to point these things out. But I think this also reminds us, it's not necessarily always the students calling these things, it's the administrators who seem to think these students are giant.
Well, there's probably a department inside that university whose job it is to put trigger warnings on things.
Who comes? Even came up with the phrase, I'm feeling triggered. This triggers me.
Oh, really?
People do that, don't they? I saw a thing on YouTube once. It was in America, and this woman going mad because people were clapping. She said, please stop clapping. It triggers me.
Oh, it's embarrassing. And because it's just an invitation to act, to kind of pretend like you're incredibly vulnerable. But the thing is, this is really jumping the shark, this story now. It was the other week that we heard that 1984 was given a trigger warning. Satire is dead once that's happening. It seems like.
I'll tell you what nearly triggered me, that woman you had on with 19 cats.
Yes.
12. 12
I think
cats.
it was 12 and another 5 in the garage. Yeah. That's a lot of cats. And we still want to see a picture.
It's a lot of dreamies to have to
Send
buy.
us a picture of all those cats, please.
Were they all indoor as well?
12 of them were, yeah.
12 of them, and 5 in the garage. And any other cat that happened to go through the compound, she
And then
fed.
you can't have cats that are allowed outside now because in case they trigger the bird life.
Yeah, well, I know. The world has gone mad, frankly.
We've been cat mad this morning. Thank you very much indeed for taking us through the papers. Let's bring you up to date with what's in the news.
The Prime Minister is looking at doubling the number of troops deployed to strengthen Europe's borders in the face of rising Russian aggression. Boris Johnson said it would send a clear message to the Kremlin that we will not tolerate their destabilising activity.
And Boris Johnson has committed to the national insurance increase set to go ahead in April. Prime Minister has been under pressure from some of his party to scrap or at least delay the measure in the midst of the cost of living crisis. It's a 1.25% rise, designed, of course, to tackle COVID-induced NHS backlogs and reform social care.
The government says Wolverhampton and Sheffield will be the first of 20 disadvantaged areas to gain access to a £1.5 billion fund. It's part of levelling up plans, and the money will be used to develop new neighbourhoods on brownfield sites.
And a second storm is set to hit the northern half of the UK. Storm Corrie is expected to bring winds of up to 90 miles an hour. Meanwhile, thousands of homes in northeast England are still without power after Storm Malik battered the country. Many people say it's like living in the dark ages, but a 60-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy were killed by the storm too.
The COVID vaccine rollout has been extended to about 50,000 children aged between 5 and 11. Children who are most at risk of COVID or are living with someone who's vulnerable will be offered the jab. They'll get 2 Pfizer vaccines 8 weeks apart, but the dose is just a third of the amount used for adults.
And on the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the former leader of the Labour Party says it's an outrage that no one's been convicted for the murders. Jeremy Corbyn has also condemned government plans to ban prosecutions for killings in the Troubles. Boris Johnson has tweeted to say we must learn from the past, reconcile and build a peaceful future for people in Northern Ireland.
Aidan McGee's got all our sport for us this morning. Good to see you once again, Aidan. Look, the transfer window is closing.
Yeah.
What do we need to look out for last minute?
Well, I think it's difficult to see beyond Everton at the moment. I mean, don't get me wrong, there is other stuff going on, but this is a really curious situation because I've never really known a scenario like this where Frank Lampard is yet to be confirmed as the Everton manager. We expect that to happen tomorrow. He was offered the job yesterday, we believe, 2 interviews. He had quite a bit of competition as well. It sort of tailed off towards the end when Wayne Rooney pulled away from it. Duncan Ferguson was at a disadvantage because he wasn't able to play a game yesterday, and if you're in the caretaker charge, you need to be, you're the one in possession of the job, and therefore you need games to show your worth. But this will be confirmed tomorrow. Frank Lampard, new manager of Everton, he's then got until 11 o'clock tomorrow night to sign the players, and obviously they need radical surgery. They wouldn't be changing.
Gosh, he has to move that quickly, does he?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, look, Donny van der Beek, they're looking to do loan deals. You can do loan deals quicker than you can do permanent deals. Obviously, if it's a loan deal and the player does well, there's a possibility of making it permanent at the end of the season, which would be, May, June time when the contract comes up for renewal. But Donny van der Beek, 4 starts for Manchester United since September 2020, Dutch international. It hasn't gone well for him there at all. Frank Lampard, as a coach often does, they often look at a player and think, well, why hasn't it worked at one place? Maybe I can get a bit more out of him at this place. It's not too far removed, just 34 miles down the road from Manchester to Liverpool. Dele Alli, another loan from Tottenham. That's one that's being explored tomorrow. Long-term admirer of the player. He's fallen out of favour at Tottenham under 2 or 3 successive managers now. I think Frank Lampard would look at him again and think, this player was a stellar performer for England, 2 or 3 years ago. Surely I can get a bit more out of him now. And, of course, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, another England player who was at the World Cup in 2018. Frank Lampard managed him at Chelsea. Another young player who's had a good loan spell recently at Crystal Palace, another one more recently at Fulham. But, again, in and out of the side at Chelsea, probably surplus to requirements when we look at it in totality. And again, Frank Lampard looking at him and thinking, look, I'm a coach. I can earn my money by improving this player. And so they need numbers. Everton have cleared the decks as well by removing a couple of players in the last few months. Big earners. James Rodriguez, £190,000 a week. Nice work if you can get it. £130,000 a week. Luca Dean, who's gone to Aston Villa. So they've cleared the decks to bring these players in. But as Anne just alluded to there, you've got to act so quickly. He's got a few hours to get the job done. And I've never known a situation like that in football before.
Meanwhile, has Rafa Nadal started playing yet?
He's knocking up at the moment. Just having a little practice over the net.
Yeah.
So we expect to get it going ever so quickly. But yeah, I was looking at the numbers. He can go to 21 Grand Slams, as we discussed earlier on the last few days.
You don't think he will, though?
Well, I just think, to people outside of tennis, Medvedev doesn't necessarily have the personality. He doesn't transcend the sport the way some of the real stellar performers of the last 20 years have. Federer, Nadal, even Murray to a degree, and of course Novak Djokovic, who we've been discussing in the last few weeks. So if you're outside of tennis, you hear this stellar name, Rafa Nadal, you think it's almost processional. He's going to win. Medvedev is the US Open champion.
If Nadal doesn't make it this time, he'll make it in the French Open, won't he?
Yeah,
He'll still get his 21 this year,
I think you're probably right. You could have a situation where Novak Djokovic, due to all the problems that are ongoing, all the wranglings that are persisting in his case, he might not set foot onto a Grand Slam court until Wimbledon. By then, if Nadal wins today, and as we expect, he will win the French Open, especially if Djokovic isn't going to be there, because he's the main challenger in France.
Well, they've said they won't admit him unless he's vaccinated.
I know. So at the moment, I mean, you're looking at a very real possibility that by the end of May, Nadal could be 2 slams ahead of Djokovic and of course of Federer, who was injured. Yeah. But then there's the issue of a lot of people are saying to me today, look, it's not a real competition anyway because Federer's not there, because Djokovic is not there.
Oh, it's really
not. Oh, that's not fair.
Really
you can only beat what's in front of you. It's not Rafa's fault, is it?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Aidan, thank you. We'll catch up with you a little bit later on.
And do stay with us, because in the next hour we're going to be meeting Winston Churchill. Just like that.
You wouldn't believe it, would you?
Yeah, there's lots to come in the next hour.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 30th of January. This is Breakfast on GB News with Stephen and Anne.
And don't forget, we're on both your TV and your radio and online across the world.
Can't believe January's gone already.
Is it last day of January?
Well,
30 days? No, there's one more.
One
day,
more,
isn't it?
but,
Yeah.
you know, very nearly.
Oh, absolutely, nearly there, yes. Yeah. No good, because January's a bleak month, isn't it?
Is it?
Yeah, once
I
Christmas
don't
is over,
mind
it's
it.
bleak.
I don't mind it. It's just it has zipped by.
Yeah.
Wherever you are today, don't forget you can take us out and about with you this morning. If you need to head out, just pop the radio on or pop the app on, and
Take us with you.
We can be there for you 24/7.
Yeah. Now to our main story. The Sunday Times reports that the Chancellor has won the tug of war over the proposed hike in national insurance. In a joint article, the Prime Minister and Rishi Sunak insist they are still tax-cutting Conservatives, however.
As the PM considers doubling the number of troops that we have in Eastern Europe amid escalating tensions over Ukraine, we hear from Ukrainians living in the UK about how it's affecting them.
And today marks the anniversary of the day that Britain bid farewell to its greatest ever leader, Sir Winston Churchill. The former Prime Minister's funeral actually took place 57 years ago today.
Well, to mark that anniversary, we're joined later in the programme by a Winston Churchill impersonator. Here he is. Can you spot the difference? And this is him arriving here just a little bit earlier on this morning. Have we got it? There we go.
Oh, there he is, coming into GB News.
And it's just incredible, isn't it?
And he's got a private detective behind him, I think, holding the red case.
Oh, yes. I love it.
The
love
whole
it.
works.
Really looking forward to meeting him a little bit later on. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah. And you can get in touch because we're still interested in your cats.
Yes, we
Everybody's
are.
talking about them now because earlier we had somebody in Qatar saying that she had 12 cats inside the apartment.
Which is a lot.
5 in the garage, and even more, any of the others, she just obviously takes them in.
Yeah, it is an awful lot, but it's, you know, there's this new sort of guidance from PETA, if you listen to PETA, saying that cats shouldn't really be allowed out. It's
They
not
should
really
be
the thing to do.
indoors.
It's not good for them, and it's not good for other wildlife. Keeping your cat
Well, that's
inside?
right. We've been asking it because PETA say you shouldn't have a cat flap because otherwise your cat will get the idea that it can come and go whenever it wants.
Yeah.
But isn't that what cats want?
Yes, cats are in charge. Let's show you Timmy enjoying the weather yesterday.
Oh, isn't that a lovely picture?
Oh, that's beautiful. Beautiful. Sneaking into the garden plants. I don't know who sent that in. Timmy, maybe Timmy himself is quite good on that.
Yeah, well, a lot of cats appear to have their own,
Yes.
social media platforms. And then this is Maisie, who also enjoys getting out, laying about on the patio.
Oh, lovely.
So do get in touch with your pictures because it's lovely. It's lovely to see them. It's gbviews@gbnews.uk.
I love you've so nailed that now.
Well, no, I haven't. No, I have
yeah.
to think it through every single time I say it. Tracy Connor's got an interesting
Oh, go on.
point from Devon about talking about cats indoors or outdoors. She says, don't the RSPCA have something to say about this? Because I think it's absolute animal cruelty to keep a cat permanently inside. My cat would go insane if he couldn't go outside. It's not natural or healthy.
Well, I totally agree. It would be really interesting, actually, to get the RSPCA. I'll maybe do that later on
Or
in
a
the day
vet
or
or
tomorrow
something.
morning.
Yes.
We shall see, we shall see.
Yes, this one will run and run. This one's got legs, as they say.
Four of them.
Yes, exactly. Thank you.
Now, we've been talking about the issues that matter to you, of course, this morning, and that includes cost of living, energy bills that are going up, taxes that are going up, this NHS hike that's been agreed on. Does it all make Partygate a distraction, or is it a distraction from Partygate? Who knows? Let's talk to Andrew Rossendale, Conservative Member of Parliament for Romford, who's here. It's good to see you.
Morning, Stephen.
Hello, hi.
Good to be here.
Whichever way you look at it, this is a mess, isn't it? Because there's turmoil in Number 10 and there's headlines circulating that people just aren't happy with.
Well, I think that the man I met a moment ago should be in number 10, really, Winston Churchill. He's an example of a fantastic Prime Minister that showed leadership when it was needed for our country. Boris has got problems, but he is our Prime Minister, and he was elected with the largest majority of any Conservative leader since Margaret Thatcher. So whilst he has problems, I still think he's the man for the job, and he needs to be allowed to get on with the job.
Even though he's broken the rules, apparently.
We don't know what's happened entirely. We haven't seen any reports, and I hope that whatever the result of the inquiry is, that he will be honest with the British people, apologise if mistakes were made. But I honestly don't think that this is the time to drag a Prime Minister out of number 10 and have more turmoil with yet another leadership election, the civil servants effectively running government for months until the new government's installed. We need leadership at the moment, and he was the man that we elected to do that job.
We've had an email in from one of our viewers, Paul, who says if Boris had said, hands up, I got it wrong, and yes, work gatherings went beyond what they should have been, but it's a culture that I will not allow to happen again, then I think he would have put this to bed right from the start.
I agree, and he can still say that, and I hope he does, because clearly there were things going on in number 10. I don't actually think he was instigating them. I think civil servants and staffers and other people were getting together and having drinks and so on, and they shouldn't have been doing it. We all agree with that. But, you know, I do think it's gone a bit too far when he's given a slice of birthday cake and he's condemned for that. Let's put things into perspective.
Well, I tell you what, keeping it in perspective, and a lot of people get in touch are saying whether they want Boris to stay in position or not. They say what we're really bothered about are things like the cost of living crisis.
Absolutely.
And the fact that, you know, energy bills for some people are going up already. By April, they could jump up a huge amount. Now, what realistically can be done about that? Because the only thing that the government's doing at the minute is saying, well, actually, we're going to increase your national insurance.
Well, I agree. And, you know, I'm a tax-cutting Conservative and I didn't vote for the increase in national insurance. And I am very concerned about the cost of living, how it's going to affect my constituents. It's not what the people want. They don't want taxes to rise. But I also understand the government have to balance the books. And we have a huge black hole. After the pandemic, the government have spent way too much, far too much than we can really afford. We are in the biggest national debt we've ever had. So I do understand why they're bringing this in, though I don't personally think it's right. I think low taxes create a more vibrant economy and the tax income in the end is greater. I think raising taxes isn't really the answer. It's certainly not the right way forward for a Conservative government.
I mean, it's throwing people into panic, isn't it? Because, for instance, Mick's got in touch. He says, how am I feeling? Well, very angry. I'm struggling to keep my disabled wife and myself warm. Fed up with this government increasing everything, putting green levies on energy, which is the biggest part of the problem. Staying warm when you're immobile is really hard. No matter what you do, you still feel cold. And when you're in pain and you start shivering, the pain increases. The environment you're in needs to be a good temperature, and maintaining that costs a fortune. God knows what I'm going to do come April. Next winter is going to be impossible. You must hear this from your constituents.
I do. I was in the constituency yesterday and people are very concerned about the rising energy costs, the cost of living generally, paying more taxes. This can't continue. We have to consider how it's going to affect people, man and woman in the street and their families. And the green levy, for instance. Now, why don't we just suspend that for the time being? That will save the average person a lot of money, and that would help them pay their energy bills. So that's one thing they should consider.
Does that not create another black hole somewhere?
These things always do, but we are, I'm afraid, in my view anyway, not necessarily everyone's view in the government, that my view is that perhaps we're going a bit too far on some of the green stuff at the moment. I think we need to tone it down.
Why is the Prime Minister so committed to
it? Well, I understand why he's committed to it, because we all want the environment to be improved. We're concerned about the effects of climate change, but I didn't get into politics to make my constituents poor. And if we impose more and more levies and taxes based on the green agenda, I think the danger is that we're going to turn people very poor because they won't be able to afford the costs. It is unaffordable. So we need to be more realistic about the...
At least in the short term?
Yeah, I mean, the net zero is going to cost a lot of money. If we keep pursuing this in the way that we're doing, this is going to be incredibly expensive for the country. But we are one of the leading countries in the world that has tackled climate change. It's not us, really, that needs to look at this. It's China, it's India, it's Australia, it's America. Why should we keep actually treating ourselves as if we are the bad guys when actually other countries are far worse?
Well, it's a leading by example thing, isn't it, by a lot of it. And of course, we've just hosted the COP26 in Glasgow, which obviously didn't go too well. But the bottom line in all of this is whether the Conservatives reduce the Green levy for a period of time or not, these sort of things are here to stay. You're not going to get the Labour Party ditching it, are you? And ultimately, the Conservative leadership doesn't really want to ditch it. So these things are just part of life now.
Well, not necessarily. We don't know what Labour would do if they're ever in power again, and I don't know what Conservative government will do once we're over this particularly bad period. But what I do think is that any government in power has a duty to ensure that the people can live decent lives. And if we're raising taxes, if we're adding on levies, if we're imposing things they can't afford, this is going to actually affect people's
What about
families.
properly taxing these huge multinationals that don't seem to pay their fair share of tax? What about taxing the people who can afford to pay the tax?
Yeah, well, I think the government already does that, or is trying to do it. So there are multinationals, big corporates, that are trying to get away with not paying the tax they should. There should be tougher action on that. I completely agree with you. And I think everyone should pay a fair share of tax. Nobody should get away with not paying their fair share. Some try to do so. But the government have, since David Cameron became Prime Minister, the government have tried to find ways of closing some of these loopholes. And I think it's right, because everyone should pay their fair share towards the cost of running the country. But we should always consider the poorest in society. And that's why it's very important that we have raised the basic level of tax. So a lot of people have been taken out of the tax bracket by raising that level.
Can I just ask you about the Ukraine situation? Because there are a lot of people... I mean, obviously, it is in of itself a very serious situation. But when there's talk bandied about of, doubling the number of British troops who may be sent to the region and what have you, it's very easy to say. And yet there have been a lot of people watching right now who are either could be being sent out there, or whose brothers or partners or children could be getting sent out there. That's a real concern.
It is, but Stephen, it's a reminder that Britain is still a major player in the world. We are a NATO member, and we have, together with the United States and other countries, been an upholder of democracy and freedom around the world. But we can't take on every battle. Now, we shouldn't appease Russia. The way the president of Russia is behaving is outrageous, and he is bullying Ukraine. Ukraine is a relatively new democracy, but this is historic. This has gone on for many centuries. What goes on in that part of the world isn't really something that we have traditionally concerned ourselves with. We should support Ukraine and not appease Russia, but it's not for us, in my view, to send British troops to fight in conflict. I don't think we're sending troops to fight in conflict. We're sending them to help the Ukrainians, to advise them and train them, but it's not for us to enter a war.
OK. Look, Andrew Rosnell, it's good to talk to you. Have you got a cat?
No, I've had dogs, but not cats, unfortunately. But I don't have a dog at the moment, but I'd love to get another one.
All right. So you've no view on whether cats should be allowed out or not?
I think all animals should be allowed their freedom up to a limit.
Yes. That's a fair point.
Very good one. That's a politician's answer, though, isn't it, really?
It's really good to see you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah. Let's bring you up to date, then, with what's in the news right now. The Foreign Secretary has said Britain would rule nothing out to support Ukraine resistance if Russia invades. Liz Truss is looking to widen the scope of sanctions that the UK can apply on Russia. And this comes, of course, as Boris Johnson looks to double the number of troops deployed to strengthen Europe's borders, as we've been hearing.
Well, Boris Johnson has committed now to the national insurance increase set to go ahead in April. The Prime Minister has been under pressure from some of his party to scrap or at least delay the measure in the midst of the cost of living crisis. It's a 1.25% rise designed to tackle COVID-induced NHS backlogs and reform social care.
And the government says Wolverhampton and Sheffield will be the first of 20 so-called disadvantaged areas to gain access to a £1.5 billion fund, part of levelling up plans. The money will be used to develop new neighbourhoods on brownfield sites.
A second storm is going to hit the northern half of the UK later on tonight. Storm Corrie is expected to bring winds of about 90 miles an hour. Meanwhile, thousands of homes in northeast England are still without power after Storm Malik yesterday battered the country. Some people there say it's like living in the Dark Ages. A 6-year-old woman and a 9-year-old boy were killed by the storm.
And the COVID vaccine rollout has been extended now to about 50,000 children aged 5 to 11. Children who are most at risk of COVID or who are living with someone who's vulnerable will be offered the jab, and they'll be given 2 Pfizer vaccines 8 weeks apart. The dose will be a third of the amount used for adults.
On the 50th anniversary of Bloody Sunday, the former leader of the Labour Party, Jeremy Corbyn, says it's an outrage that no one has been convicted for the murders. He's also condemned government plans to ban prosecutions for Troubles killings. The PM tweeted to say we must learn from the past, reconcile and build a peaceful future for people in Northern Ireland.
9:15.
Yeah. Now, the Prime Minister, as we've been talking about just in the headlines there, is considering a move which would see the number of UK troops deployed in Eastern Europe double. Minister's currently weighing up the options to increase pressure on Russia amid heightened tensions over Ukraine.
Our reporter Alice Porter joins us now to look at the crisis and how it's affecting Ukrainians in the UK. Hello there, Alice. Well, tell us exactly that. How is it affecting Ukrainians?
Good morning. Well, there are tens of thousands of Ukrainians that are living in the UK, and the majority live here in London. So I thought I'd come along and speak with some of them, see how they're feeling about the situation that is really unravelling. And I'm joined by Vlodko and Natalia here at the Association of Ukrainians of Great Britain at the London branch. Thanks so much for joining me and letting me come along. Natalia, I wanted to start with you because I know you said you've got all your family that are back in Ukraine. Just tell me, how are they feeling at the moment?
I would say scared a little bit, not knowing what's going to happen next, frustrated. But there is another side to that coin. They will not leave their houses. They will not leave their land if something will start.
And now, Vlodko, you obviously, you run this branch here and you're speaking with Ukrainians in London, but of course there's many across the country. I mean, how do you think they're feeling at the moment with these growing tensions between Russia, the UK, the US, Ukraine? I mean, it's a really difficult situation.
Yes, I concur with what Natalia said just previously, that communities, whether they be in the Midlands, the North West, Yorkshire, they are worried, they are concerned. I know yesterday in Leeds there was a flash mob of Ukrainians, communities from Halifax, Huddersfield, Bradford, Leeds, and they are worried, they are concerned because we don't know really what to expect. You know, they watch the TV, watch the news, read the press, watch different websites, read different websites. So they are concerned because Putin has a history of this. He can act suddenly without giving any notice, without expectation, and people will die and people will be injured, and people who have friends and family not just in Western Ukraine but Eastern Ukraine are worried for them.
And now we've heard from President Biden, Boris Johnson, I mean, even today that, more troops and arms could be sent to Ukraine. I mean, for the two of you, how does that sort of feel for you, knowing that there is an outpouring of support from two major sort of world leaders in this way?
It's very important. I think in 2014 the response from the West was too little too late. I think with the weapons supplies continuously being airlifted in Ukraine, it will make a difference. It will make Putin think twice, because then he's got to explain to his Russian population the body bags, the casualties that the Russian army will incur if they invade Ukraine further.
And we've got Boris Johnson is going to be speaking to Vladimir Putin. He's hopefully going to be visiting the region over the next couple of days. I mean, Natalia, if you could sort of say anything to Boris Johnson, what would it be in terms of how you're feeling about the situation and what he needs to do in terms of standing up to Putin?
Firstly, I want to say thank you to all the friends who supported Ukraine. And I would remind about Budapest Memorandum first. That everyone needs to remember who signed this. Secondly, we can't anymore lose time to stand up to Putin, because he will go further. Ukraine is not his last point. And we, for all these gifted 8 years that we've given him to prepare for the war even more, we always were actually crying out, even in Downing Street, when the last Ukrainian soldiers will fall, Putin will come for you. And this is probably the truth. So now we need to understand, stand up and stop him.
Because, of course, I mean, this isn't for both of you. You know, I know, obviously, Natalia, you've grown up in Ukraine. There's quite a history there in terms of the way in which Russia's behaved, and this isn't an isolated incident. I think that's maybe where some people, perhaps in the UK, who might not know the backstory, may watch this and not quite understand. But I know we were speaking earlier, and you were saying, well, this isn't isolated. There's a long history, from your point of view, of Russian aggression in Ukraine.
Yeah, it started a very long time ago. It just was different form of aggression, like feminine 32, 33. A lot of what was doing Russia was doing to Ukraine to actually sort of have as like their slaves or make a state of Russia. But Ukraine is a very big country. It's the biggest country of Europe, and we are independent. We've got everything of ourselves, so we can manage ourselves. Just they need to leave us alone. We can be a good neighbors possibly, but we are not the same, and he has to understand that.
Now, of course, it's important to stress, you know, Russia will say one of the reasons they're behaving in this way is they don't want Ukraine to join NATO, and they're concerned about any NATO troops being on Ukraine's border, which they will see as an act of aggression. I mean, if you sort of, that is one point of view. I mean, what would you say to Putin's government in regards to that?
Well, the countries have a choice here whether they want to join the NATO. And, you know, if you look at the Eastern European countries, the Baltic states, why have they joined NATO? Because they understand there is a threat to the East. And so every country has a choice whether they join NATO or not. And the Baltic states and most countries in Eastern Europe took that choice because they have an imperialist power. Moscow has always been an imperialist power, an empire. And that's why they want to join NATO, to safeguard their country, to safeguard their borders.
Well, look, thank you, both of you, for joining me today to talk about an issue which I think so many people have been watching and are very, very much concerned over the situation. And it's important to stress that this may be something that is happening between major countries, but at the middle of that and at the heart of it are ordinary Ukrainians who are, many of them, very concerned about the situation.
Indeed so. Alice Porter, thank you. I mean, that's the key to all of these sort of issues, isn't it? It involves real people and real lives.
And it's like you were saying earlier as well, the headlines are all about us deploying more troops or whatever. But if you are family of a soldier, serving soldier or something, you will be worried. You can't help but be. The headlines don't make very good reading, do they?
No, they don't. Do stay with us here on Breakfast. We've got lots more to come, including all the sport and all the showbiz, and
Winston Churchill, he's here. But first, the weather.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farrar, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Hello again, it's 9:26. Welcome back. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, and we're live across the UK on both your TV and your radio.
We're going to have to sort that out. You know, we all sit here very politely, not wanting to speak over the
No,
other
I know,
one.
we're too nice to each other, aren't we?
I should just
Be more
barge
competitive.
in. We've got all the sport agents here with the sport. But first, let's have a look at the showbiz with Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning.
Love your intros.
Do you?
They're the best.
It's like verbal diarrhea at times.
Oh,
There you go.
stop it.
Sorry.
Tell us about Lily James, because Stephen and I were both saying, hang on, which one's Lily James? Mm-hmm. She was in Downton Abbey,
She was in Downton Abbey, and she also starred as Cinderella as well. And so she's been known as...
she's good.
She
Yes,
is,
yes,
and
she
she's
is.
known as a bit of an English rose, but she's kind of shed her good girl image, and she's a good girl gone bad. Because this week we're going to be seeing her in a new series called Pammy and Tom. So this series is going to be about the infamous marriage of Pamela Lee Anderson and Tommy Lee, and obviously they had a bit of a sex tape scandal as well.
They did, yes.
But reviewers have been saying that the series is a bit X-rated, but Lily has defended it and said it's a part of the story and she's keen for viewers to see it so they get a better understanding of what happened in their marriage. She did reach out to Pamela Anderson for it and she refused to get involved with it, so I think it is going to be quite a scandalous series.
Really? And yet they must make some money. You can't do a programme, can you, about someone who's alive without them making a bit of money out of it somehow?
Definitely.
I think you can, yes, you can. I mean, obviously, you'd be subject to, if you did anything that defamed them, you'd be subject to laws. But you can definitely make a movie about somebody without their consent, I think.
No, you can. I think they've got away with it because it's an 8-part series, so it's not like it's going to be a one-off. So they're really getting into the depth of the stories. But the thing is, I think for Pamela Anderson, it opens old wounds because they kind of put it to bed and now it's going to resurface again.
I can't think of anything worse than somebody making a movie about your old marriage.
I know.
I mean, that really is awful,
and
isn't
a sex tape as well.
But do you think Lily James is trying to sort of shed her good,
she
Miss
has,
Perfect image?
because she had that whole controversy with Dominic West last year where they were caught sharing a bit of a smooch. And I think since then she kind of came under attack from the public because they expected her to be like a goody two-shoes. And with this role, she's really shedded it. And it's like, go Lily, do what you've got to do.
I worked with her brother a few years ago at Sky. I remember him telling me, his name's Charlie Thompson, fantastic bloke.
Yeah.
And I remember him telling me about 7 years ago, I got my little sister's involved in acting. And I was like, we'll see what comes with that. And there she is, of course, everywhere at the moment.
It's quite nice, that, isn't it? It's nice when you see people sort
I
of
used to be
rise
on
the
telly
top.
with Dominic Holland, whose son is Tom Holland.
Oh, yes.
And he used to tell me how awful it was to have to drive him into the West End every night when he was doing Billy Elliot. You know, I hope it's worth it one day. I hope my child kid makes it big. And he's Tom Holland now.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and actually, there's a story about Tom Holland in the papers moving into a £3 million mansion in Richmond or somewhere.
Lucky for some.
girlfriend who's in the movies with him, and all very nice.
Showbiz lifestyle,
I think we've got a bit of a trailer. Do we have a trailer available?
Of
Pamela?
Oh, no, it's gone.
Oh, it's gone.
It's gone.
All right, next.
Can we talk Janet Jackson?
Oh, gosh. I
love a bit of Janet.
Are you guys a fan of the Jacksons? Are you a fan of Janet Jackson?
I mean, Michael Jackson, I think you have to appreciate.
You don't
big
sort of call
talent.
yourself a fan anymore,
No,
do you,
it's a bit of a controversial.
But Janet
his music was wonderful.
Yeah.
Janet Jackson's amazing.
Well, over the past 5 years, Janet's been working on a documentary where she's opening up about her life and just her whole experience of being a part of the Jackson family. And one of the damaging revelations that is due to come out is she said that her brother Michael used to body shame her. She said that he used to call her words such as pig, horse, cow, and in this documentary she really talks about how it left a lasting effect on her, and it causes her weight issues as well. And surprisingly, you know, when he died they had a really close relationship, but she's quite honest in this documentary and said that their relationship was quite fractured for a very long time, and that when Michael's success came after Thriller, it's like she no longer had a brother. You know, she had to go through all of his reps to get through to him. So this is definitely going to be a very interesting documentary. She obviously touches on the child sex abuse allegations against Michael as well. So this is going to be one of the most interesting documentaries we're going to see about the Jacksons that we haven't seen in a very long time.
Where's that going to be?
It's going to be on Sky Documentaries and Now TV, and it's going to be from tomorrow, and it's a 4-part series.
Oh, it will be interesting if you do get a proper sort of look behind the curtain.
Yeah. Well, it was a dysfunctional family, wasn't it? And I suppose that they were both, they were roughly the same age, weren't they?
Yeah,
they were
close. It's only a few years.
Yeah, so, I mean, she must have grown up in the same sort of dysfunctional world he did.
That's the thing with childhood superstars. You know, eventually later on in life, they come up with all these stories, and you realise that, you know, despite the fame, they've had a, you know, very tough upbringing psychologically as well.
Yeah. Can we have a bit of Adele again? I mean, do you know what? I didn't think Adele did the right thing in cancelling Vegas.
Yeah, no.
But I am feeling a bit sorry for Adele now, because the constant pressure on her is not healthy for someone who we know can be a bit fragile.
Definitely, and she's always been open about suffering from anxiety and having panic attacks before going on stage. So after cancelling such a big show such as Las Vegas, you can imagine the next big show would have been the Brits.
Yes.
And the amount of anxiety she must be feeling about that may have led to cause, as The Sun is reporting today, that she's pulled out of the show. And obviously this is going to be another setback for Adele, because before the Las Vegas residency, she was having an amazing comeback. But this has all dented it, and she won't be at the Brits, which is going to be a shame. And, you know, her team have decided that, you know, if she did perform, it would just cause too much controversy.
Yes, clearly it would have happened sooner or later anyway, and she obviously, well, who knows why she really pulled out, but I hope... It just seems a shame, because everybody says she's clearly a recording artist.
Yeah, she is.
She has a fear of doing stage work. But isn't it the record companies or somebody, maybe management, I don't know, they always put an enormous amount of pressure that once you've brought out an album, you've got to tour it.
Yeah, they are the ones who are always pulling the strings. I think when we see all these artists, we think they have control of their careers. They don't. It's the management who's telling them, you're going to perform there, you're going to do this. Sometimes they don't even get a say. All we see is the final product. But behind the scenes, as we know with many stars before, they come out and say, I had...
It was always the way, wasn't it?
My life.
It was always the way, yeah.
Always the way. And,
but you can see I mean, wouldn't you honestly, to go and see Adele perform live, it'd be amazing, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, without question, yeah.
But
I was hoping Stephanie might get some tickets.
Don't worry, I'll work on that later on in the year. She's due for Hyde Park, so fingers crossed she'll be there, yes,
Walking
in July.
distance from here.
Yeah, but it does leave a big gap in the Brits. So who's going to fill Adele's spot? You know, that's a big...
She's still up for awards, isn't she?
4 awards.
Yeah, I mean, she could still get those awards.
Yeah,
but
and maybe
somebody else has to go and receive them for her.
because she won't go.
You're offering?
Yeah. Will she? I'd go. We'd do a number.
We could.
Do a number.
We'll receive her awards.
I think you guys would be fabulous.
We're
guests.
offering. We'll do a nice little tune. Pick your tune.
Yeah. We could do some sort of karaoke number, couldn't we?
Someone like me, like you. That would be a good one.
To mime it, maybe. Try singing that would be difficult.
Lip sync for our lives on that one. Let's have a quick roundup of the sport then, Aidan McGee.
I've left my phone in the other room.
Probably wise.
Yeah, probably. So no, I don't know what's happened in the last 5 minutes or so, but Rafa Nadal has lost a break of serve in the first set. He was 4-2 down.
Oh,
against,
he's a champ. He'll
Daniel
overcome that.
Medvedev. It's not over yet. First set, of course, but we'll be following that one with interest. We've had what's her first name? Ash Barty. That's it. What was it? What was the headline in the Mail?
Barty Party.
That's the one. Yeah. I was concentrating on the surname too much. Yeah, she won yesterday. Can I just go to that? 'Cause we've got a big day tomorrow. We've got the transfer deadline tomorrow. Frank Lampard. I've never known a situation like this where he's not yet been confirmed as the Everton manager. That's expected tomorrow. He was offered the job yesterday. He's going to act really swiftly to get the players he needs in. 3 players he's targeted. Dele Alli from Tottenham. Gone off the ball there. In fact, all these players have gone off the ball, really, at their clubs. Donny van der Beek at Manchester United. 4 starts since September 2020, not enough.
Could Frank Lampard, the reason that they're not actually announcing it formally yet, could he actually be sort of doing deals? Say, I'm going to want to buy him. I think before he takes the job, definitely.
And it's a good point. I think he'll have to, because they haven't got a director of football, so he hasn't got many people helping out in the background. Yeah, he walked out a few months ago, recently, because he fell out with Rafa Benitez, the outgoing coach, or the manager rather. So he's going to have to be operating behind the scenes. You can't possibly start afresh tomorrow saying, right, who are we going to sign? We've got a big game on Saturday against Brentford in the FA Cup. Who are we going to sign? They're looking to get 3 deals.
Because he'll have right now in his head who he'd like to sign.
He'll have been watching. Look, he'll have every manager, whether they're honest about it or not, when they see the jobs that are coming available, they start. I mean, you've got all the tools at your disposal now. You can watch a team a month before you take over. I mean, managers turn up, prospective candidates turn up to interviews knowing everything, the inside trouser length measurements of every player in the squad, let alone the first team. So, and also with someone like Ruben Loftus-Cheek, he worked with him with Chelsea as well, so he knows him internally. He knows everything he can do.
Do you think Lampard is going to do a good job?
I don't know. There's so many variables, Stephanie, that influence whether a manager does the job. And a lot of it, you know what? It's about how well you're received by the supporters. He's won that battle because you're following someone very unpopular. They didn't want this guy Vitor Pereira because they felt that he had an undistinguished managerial record at various places around Europe and elsewhere. So he's won the PR battle for the time being. That never lasts long if you're not winning games, of course. But he's respected. I remember interviewing him 15 years ago, and from nowhere, he started talking about how he liked Everton as a club, how he respected them. Now, I'm not saying that the Everton fans remember that from 15 years ago. Only statos like me who remember stuff like that. But he's done himself no harm at all going into that job. You've got to win games. You've got to get your players on side. If I was going to... It's a big job for him because he did Derby, he did Chelsea. He doesn't do a good job this time. He could be on the managerial scrap heap at the age of 44, that's the name of the game these days, sadly.
44.
Yeah, the name of the game, but they get pretty well rewarded for playing that game.
Without doubt. I'm 44 and I'm well and truly on the scrap heap, so you can come and join me.
You are not. Look, you two are fashion icons, gotta say. That's always very stylish, brave you. What do you make of this from Pauline? Morning to you, Pauline, who says, morning to the Sunshine Team.
Oh,
that's nice.
Sunshine Team.
How nice to wake up to a news programme where people laugh and talk common sense. Now, an idea for the merchandise shop, which we're setting up. She says she wants, because we're doing mugs and things apparently online at some point. I said a T-shirt with GB News on the front and pictures of the presenters on the back. I'd wear it to go shopping and on the beach.
I think that's
what do you reckon?
Great idea.
Very good idea.
Would you wear it though, Stephanie? You'd have a picture on the back.
Totally, I'll wear it to all the Showbiz events.
Oh, that'd be quite
do you know?
Actually, you won't get any sun on your back though, will you? If you're wearing a T-shirt on the beach.
Oh, well, no.
No. Unless you cut the back of it out, maybe, I don't know.
No, but that's the presenters' faces on the back.
Our faces on the back.
Yeah, you can't have both, probably, can you?
That's the best bit.
I think we should bring out a line in electric blankets. Do you remember we were talking about electric throws? Because it's going to be so cold for everybody. That I've had a note saying, electric blanket. Thank you, Anne, for reminding us about electric throws and blankets. I ordered mine straight away. Marvellous selection and colours. So maybe we should bring out a GB News one so you can sit in your freezing cold house that you can't afford to pay even for the electricity, but just enough to plug in your GB News electric throw.
I know what you're thinking, though. You're just thinking that we can plug them in here, because it is
freezing. Isn't it?
One of those big, long, fluffy snakes, the draft excluders, and put them under your bedroom door and wear a jumper, and that'll probably take care of it. GB News branded, of course.
Yeah, well, yes.
GB News fluffy snake, I love it.
Brand everything. Ada McGee, Stephanie Tetchy.
Thank you
so much.
It's been a
joy.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Coming up, finally, Churchill is going to be with us. That's right after this break.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Isabel.
And you're watching the GB News digital stream across the United Kingdom.
And around the world.
If you're here in the UK, you can also watch us on your TV screen. GB News is Freeview channel 236.
On Sky, we're channel 515.
626 on Virgin Media.
Just remember, you might need to retune your TV to watch the channel.
Yeah, and if you are doing that, find out more about retuning by going to gbnews.uk.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilized conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
It is 9:43. Very good morning to you. This is Breakfast with Stephen and Anne, live right across the UK on your TV and on your radio.
Yeah, and as we've been saying most of the morning, 57 years ago today, the country bid farewell to one of Britain's greatest ever leaders, of course, Winston Churchill.
But through a bit of TV magic, Winston is now in the studio with us this morning. Very good to see you, sir.
Well, it's wonderful to be here. Especially after that introduction.
Yes, we don't like to remind you of what happened 57 years ago,
No,
so
but
we
you
won't
can't
talk
keep-
about it.
You can't keep a good man down. You know.
No, absolutely. And you've come into GB News and everybody's been thrilled to meet you. That's the sort of reception you get wherever you go.
It is wonderful. It's wonderful that people still remember who I am and what I did.
What do you make then of what we see at the moment, the sort of political chaos?
I make it a point not to comment on modern politicians, whatever my private opinions are.
Yeah, you sort of leave them to it now. Don't you?
I have to.
Yes.
I have to. I'm 147, you know.
I know. It's astonishing.
And a little bit past doing that. But they have a difficult job, which they have to do to the best of their advantage.
Do you know, time and again, and we even had it from a Conservative MP today, didn't we? People say, oh, gosh, if Churchill were in charge, if Churchill did that. Why do you think there is still so much admiration for you nowadays?
I think probably because I was the right man at the right moment. I don't think I could probably survive in the current climate. Although one would give it a go, of course.
It's interesting, though, isn't it, when we talk about the current climate, and it seems quite brutal. I mean, you yourself were pushed out after all your successes.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That nice Mr. Attlee managed to unseat me at the end of the war. But of course, he was a very great assistance during the war. The war cabinet was true cabinet government. Because it reflected all sorts of political opinions.
Yes. I must say, we were talking about how popular you are to this very day, so much so that you still have to have a private detective following you around.
Very definitely.
Yes. Wherever you go, you have to have your entourage with you, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are a whole production. We cannot... We don't function separately.
Well, at that point, maybe we have to ask you if you wouldn't mind coming out of character and telling us how you do what you do. We ought to say, first of all, your name is Stan.
My name is Stan, hence the Winstan.
Yes, you don't appear as Winston, you appear as Winstan.
Yes, it's a character. I have great fondness for the great man, but at the end of the day, it's an act. I'm not a politician. I am an actor, but what we're trying to do is keep a piece of history alive and educate the next generations and give pleasure to the people who went through it.
But it is quite remarkable. I mean, it's quite remarkable because it's not just the voice and the face, and it's the man. We saw you walking in earlier on. Just he was saying to you, I was saying, just the shape of your back. I mean, everything.
Yes,
is just
even from the
exactly
back,
like
you
the
look like him.
Yes. Well, if you look like this, there's not a lot else you can do.
Is that what? How did it even happen that you thought I'll make a living being a Winston Churchill?
I was in the corporate world, but I was a keen amateur actor and singer, and was involved in a production of The Merry Widow for West London Opera. And someone in the dressing room started calling me Churchill, and they said, "Well, you know, what's what? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." Well, you're not offending me. What's in it? And from there, I got involved. I bought a hat, found a black suit, and started sort of wandering around.
Well, yeah, not just that. You got the cigar.
Oh well, all the paraphernalia. Has come since.
Is that a real cigar?
No, it's actually a vape.
Oh my goodness! It looks very good.
It's quite handy because we have. I end up in a lot of vintage cars and a lot of places that, and it does actually.
Vape.
I won't vape it. But,
no.
And the ministerial red box.
Well, we are involved with Barrow, Hepburn and Gale, who make these for the
real thing.
For the real thing. This is actually the real thing. It's been made for me.
Right.
We're involved in a joint venture project, which we hope to be getting off the ground shortly, called Churchill's Finest Hour.
Right. So that is exactly as he would have had.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, you do things like you go to the war rooms, don't you? The cabinet war rooms.
Yes, I do quite a bit for the Imperial War Museum on the corporate side. So we're regularly at the war rooms, HMS Belfast. I do a lot of different things. We get out to Normandy. Wonderful events. Never thought I'd be doing those sorts of things.
What do you then, as a modern man, make of Winston looking back? I mean, because the one thing that always strikes me is if you have it here it's been done on the radio beautifully, but the love letters between him and Clemmy are quite something.
They are. At some point, I'm hoping to be able to perform some of those with a suitable.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I think they'd be wonderful, and they ought to be more widely known. But looking back, well, this morning we've got Russia in the news. Well, it doesn't take a genius. The Iron Curtain speech. History has a tendency to go round and round in circles, so we're just seeing it against a different background of technology, aren't we?
Yeah,
I think it's amazing. I mean, children absolutely love meeting you because most children know who Winston Churchill was. There are a lot of other prime ministers they might not be aware of, but certainly Churchill. But what about veterans? Because I know you do a lot of those sort of gigs as well, where you're meeting, soldiers, people who've actually served.
Well, I've been doing it since started in about 2011, so I've been very lucky in terms of actually being able to meet those veterans who sadly are passing on, and that's part of the legacy. I've had many veterans who I've spoken to, or people who've lived through the war, who will take my hand. They know I'm not Churchill, but such is the influence of the man that they will tell me their stories, and often.
Isn't that interesting though? That say you might not be the great man, but people can just relate so closely that they want to show you that respect. And especially those people who we owe so much to, who went through that. That's incredible.
I usually say to them, "Look, I'm just representing the great man. You are the real thing." But of course, sadly, those inevitably.
Although I've seen you, I think, with some of the Chelsea pensioners.
Yes.
That we had a photograph of you with the What did they think of you?
Oh, they love it.
So they don't see what you do as anything wrong. They actually love the fact that you're keeping the spirit alive.
We try and treat the man. We have fun with it. But we try and treat the man with great respect and with history. I'm not a historian, but I do try and...
You know your stuff with him.
I do try and impart some knowledge and entertain as well.
Does that mean, because obviously you are looking into him more deeply than most of us do these days, I mean, do you really have a deep respect for what he did?
Very much so. The more I get to know him, the more I love and respect him. Basically, and I'm not blind to the things that he got wrong, but the things that he got right were so important, particularly between 1940 and 1942, when he changed the course of history, and at least. The respect for that, if nothing else.
And every time they do a poll to find out Britain's greatest Briton, it's usually always Churchill.
It's a great responsibility, actually.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of fun.
So do you have a very busy, whenever there's a sort of 75th anniversary of something, or do you get very, very busy?
Yes. Yes. I'd like to be able to break myself into pieces for that, for those weekends and spread them out through the year. Yeah. But we're getting quite since the pandemic, things have picked up.
Yeah, I imagine you couldn't do any of those events during the pandemic.
No, didn't do anything for...
of course, he lived to the grand old age of 90.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I looked that up this morning. I was surprised. Because, I mean, that's a very good age for someone of that generation. When was he born? 74 or something?
Yeah.
It's a very good age. Does that mean you're going to have to keep going till you're 90 with the impersonation?
Well, it's a nice thing to know that if I survive that long, there's work there to do, and I'd love to do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm amazed. He smoked up to 8 of these a day.
And drinking champagne from 6 o'clock in the morning.
And I have not had any champagne for breakfast.
You sure there is a bottle in your little red box?
It could be.
But when you do your events or something, it is the whole works, isn't it? You take several people with you. You have a car.
We try and put a production on. We've got I have a vintage Rover that we use, and we try and put on a show and entertain as well as trying to educate.
Can we get you to do a sort of classic line, which is your sort of favourite sort of phrase of his, or?
I could do a little bit of the final bit of the fight.
Ooh,
them
please,
speech.
Yes.
We will fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the hills and in the streets. We shall never surrender.
Wonderful. Look, Stanley, I mean, it's so good to see you, and I feel like I have met Winston himself.
Well, thank you very much. It's most kind. It's lovely to be here. Enjoy your day and make this your finest hour.
We will make it our finest hour.
We will. Well, we'll try. We're finishing on this hour.
Yes.
Was it our finest hour? I'm not entirely sure.
Well,
Thank you so much.
Feels it now. Thank you very much. Wow.
It is quite remarkable.
Isn't it? He's still laughing about it as he goes.
A lovely experience. I feel like I need a sort of cup of tea and some Dundee cake.
Oh, I thought absolutely. Or a glass of champagne.
A glass of champagne.
Yeah, exactly.
Really quite
well,
something.
I hope you enjoyed that too.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be lovely to see when we get out of here and see what you've had to say about that one, because so many of you have been getting in touch over the last 4 hours.
And thank you so much with your views, because that's what keeps the programme going, I think. It's what spurs us on to, ask some of those questions of the politicians and various commentators that we've had in today.
Yeah, I mean, and like on the national insurance rise, King of Gosport... Morning, Your Majesty, says it's not right to increase the tax on the normal people. Collect the correct taxes off the tax-protected super rich. It's true, the richer you are, the more ways you find to pay a bit
On the
less,
other hand, Steve Keegan, now, this this is true, isn't it? Because I've heard about this. Free NHS prescriptions to be axed from April. He says, I only came across this by accident and spoke to my local pharmacist who's confirmed it has been in all the medical journals, but unfortunately, yet again, not announced by the government to the people it will affect.
I think it's not confirmed, is it? It's just people over 60 may have to pay.
Yeah, it's just something that we're going to have to look into and continue reporting for you and find out.
Quick look at Adam Webb, who says... national insurance contribution increases are to pay for social care, yet most homeowners will still have little to leave their kids if they require long-term care. I've always voted Conservative. However, they're targeting working-class voters. They need to sort out this underhand policy. Andrew Rosendale, the MP, saying to us earlier on that he doesn't think this is the right way forward.
Well, there's no doubt that we can continue this all day here on GB News. Coming up next is Political Correction.
And the UK is looking wet and very windy in the north. That's because of Storm Corrie that's approaching. So looking at the details for you, and in the southwest, plenty of fine weather in the morning and around lunchtime. Most there seeing sunshine with highs of 8 or 9. Even sunnier across the southeast, very little cloud around, although temperatures will be a little bit lower. Now, across Wales, there's going to be some cloud coming and going, perhaps thick enough for the odd spot of rain, most likely over the hills and the mountains. Temperatures of between 8 to up to 11 on Tuesday. After a mostly sunny morning in the Midlands, the cloud will build from around lunchtime. Most places dry, with just a small chance of a little drizzle, perhaps. Up to the northeast then, and it is going to be cloudier. Plenty of sunshine this morning, but the cloud will feed in as we go through the afternoon with those strengthening winds as well. Across Scotland, turning increasingly wet and windy. Some hill snow is likely. The wind is set to cause disruption, which is why warnings have been issued. Meanwhile, in Northern Ireland, it will be pretty cloudy, although it should stay largely dry around midday. Rain will arrive in the afternoon, though, and it will become increasingly windy too.
Hello there, I'm Eamon.
And I'm Izzy.